Blog Talk Radio.
Mode 1.
I guess right now we should start the show.
You are now listening to Upfront and Straightforward with Alan Roger Curry.
The following internet radio show is for mature audiences only. That means, boys and girls, you must be 18 years of age or older to listen.
Internationally known attraction and seduction expert David X returns for the 7th time to get up front and straightforward with Alan Roger Curry. Prepare yourselves.
Oh my God, is this Alan Roger Curry of Mode 1 fame? Oh my God.
You're really good at this.
I gotta ask you, do you feel that black men have some type of unwritten obligation to date and marry someone in the race? You do?
I think they do. I think white people should date white people. I think black people should date black people.
Now, how did you come up with this idea to go to Italy with the women?
With the women, right? I just got so tired of hearing all my male friends talk about Brazil and how great Brazil is for them. When I was growing up, I would go and hear about black women complaining about white women are stealing our men. Don't complain about your goods being stolen if you casually leave them on the front porch. Have sex. Enjoy your life.
You know, men really want women to have standards. They really do. And I don't know how we got off of the mark there, but men do like classy women, and they want women to have standards.
I think you can be single and be very, very happy, and I think it's about taking the pressures off about being married.
I'm not saying that you should disrespect the woman. Never disrespect your woman, but the key is to not let her walk all over you.
Romantic love is very volatile. People don't realize it. And it is a drug. People don't realize it. Men and women do stupid things. Not all men, but sometimes you'll do something stupid.
I think it's a turn on because just to see that person, just to enjoy themselves and just to watch them touching that person and making them feel good, I think that's kind of sexy, actually.
Yo, Mode 1. This is Gerard McClendon from Chicago tonight and the McClendon Report. Right now you're listening to Upfront and Straightforward with my good friend Alan Roger Curry. Mode 1. Let the women know, fellas, what you're really thinking. Ha ha. Alan Roger Curry.
And my rule number one is, who cares what the other person thinks? You have to think for yourself. I tell them, you got enough problems thinking for yourself. Don't think for somebody else. I had a very successful dating life, I would call it. It started when I was very young. I think I was maybe or right at the right time for me. And I was approached by a younger kid that looked up to me, admired me. You know, he was 5 years younger than me, and he was always in awe because I moved out early because I needed an apartment. The motels and hotels were costing me a fortune, so it was cheaper to live on my own. And this guy kept dropping by, and he always saw tons of girls and girlfriends always around. And he kept telling me about guys that couldn't get a girlfriend, couldn't get a date, and I laughed at him. I thought he was joking. I didn't believe that guys like that existed. There's no substance to these guys. After they finished entertaining them, they've got to relax and be themselves, but they can't because they build a facade. A facade you have to keep going for the rest of your life. And when you start with lies, it just mushrooms like a cancer disease until it eats up the relationship. When the fellow that calls himself Mystery was starting off, he came to me for some counseling, and I know what problems he had. I can't divulge what he's talked to me in confidence about, but I'll tell you, the more I see what he's doing to other people, the more I know that approach to entertain a woman or to clown or to, I mean, yes, women will stop and listen to the show. It's the same thing when you're walking down the street and there's a guy on the sidewalk doing a mime or he's playing some real good music or something, and everybody stands around and watches him. Yeah, they throw some coins in his thing too. I mean, now there's professional phone number services where you can give the guy your phone number and your email, and he gets like a little slap back. Hey, buddy, she doesn't want to talk to you. Don't call her again, kind of thing. Email or phone number. I mean, she doesn't know who you are. She knows what you do for a living. You're a clown. If you're a man, you can stand in front of anything you said. You don't have to be afraid or hide behind it. And that's, if you ask women what they're looking for, they want a man who can stand for what he says, who's not afraid of what he says. And that gives them the confidence, that gives them the honesty, trust, and respect. And if you have that, they want to be with you. They want you to be their dream, their fantasy man, a man who's paying attention to them. Not every guy can be as dominant as I am, let's say. But if you're not dominant, you still have to be however you are. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter how you are. If, like we were saying before, and I mentioned this before, if you're a real slob, or you hate cooking, or you don't like to take a shower till the morning, and you want to do your girlfriend at night, and she says, no, you got to take a shower before you do me, well, then you have to decide if you're going to find a girl who won't be like that, or do what she wants you to do. If you take the position of leading, you have to lead all the time. If you take the position of being led, you're led all the time. You can't fluctuate from one or the other. You can't choose to be led unless you say, today in the bedroom, I'm going to lie there, you start with me. That's a different story. When I was younger, I used to get them like in 2s and 3s, and I could pick and choose or do them all together. They used to hang around my place. They used to clean up for me, cook for me. I didn't have to do shit, but you've got to lead. You know what it is? It's setting a precedence. Whenever you start it, you have to follow through. If you don't start it, you don't have to follow through. The effect of how far you go is up to you. But you have to remember, once you've set out your parameters, that's what the rules are. I said, did you ever fuck her in 2 years? He goes, no, because she knew you wanted to fuck her. Why else were you keeping her around? So she was using you for 2 years. She's a smart bitch, but she's a bitch.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Upfront and Straightforward with Alan Roger Curry. You're on the Blog Talk Radio, Internet Radio Network, and I'm your host, Alan Roger Curry. And the voice you just heard was that of my guest tonight. He simply goes by the name David X. I already see about 15 people in my phone queue. So as the show goes on, if you want to ask a question or you have a comment to express, you got to press the number 1. That lets me know that you have something to say. So you don't have to do it now, but as the show goes on, you have to press the number 1 to let me know that you want to either ask a question or make a comment. Otherwise, I will assume that you are just listening. Today is Thursday, October 22nd, and I'm going to be welcoming back a guest that I've had on the show a record, including tonight, 7 times. This discussion tonight will be his 7th time being on my show. I've actually had him on the show twice prior to today as an individual guest, and then there was 4 other times where he was on my show with at least one additional guest. Like the very last time he was on my show, it was the first Thursday of 2012, and he was actually one of 2 guests I had on my show. I had a guy from New York City named Justin Wayne, and then after him I interviewed David X. That was the very last time that I had him on my show, and then the very last time I interviewed him individually, one-on-one, was December of 2009. So you're talking about 6 years ago. In December of 2009 was the last time I interviewed him in a one-on-one manner. And so I'm looking forward to it. Among other things, the main thing we're going to be talking about is anything and everything to do with manhood. You know, making a transition from a young boy to a teenager to a man. And if you're already an adult male and you feel like you're more of a beta male than an alpha male, then we're going to be talking about making a transition from a beta male to an alpha male. Now, it's funny because David X, he only uses those terms occasionally. He's old school. He doesn't really, per se, use the terms alpha male. I've heard him use it sparingly. Mainly, his terminology for alpha male versus beta male is simply a man who leads his woman or a man who allows his woman to lead him. That's his basic description of an alpha male versus a beta male, is a man who leads and a man who follows. And, yeah, that's what matter of fact, he says at any given point in time, he feels like you either leading a woman, you following a woman, or she ain't got shit to do with you. Which I agree. Because, matter of fact, my listeners have heard me say on this show a similar thing. One thing I always tell my followers and male clients is at any given point in time, either a woman is operating on your program or you're operating on her program. So it's essentially the same thing. That's what I tell guys. Either you operating on a woman's program or she operating. Typically, if you're an alpha male, that means a woman's operating on your program. If you're a beta male, that generally means you operating on a woman's program. She's the one who's dictating the terms and conditions of the relationship. You're not. So anyway, that's the main thing we're going to be talking about tonight. And Diva said something about you say that like it's a bad thing. Yeah, well, for me, Adrian, you know, we've had this discussion before. That's Adrian, my number one most loyal listener. She's in my chat room. I give her props. She always listens to my shows. We know each other for years. But if there's one heated debate I've had with a lot of women over the years, sometimes it's a lighthearted debate, other times it's more serious, including this show. I think I've had at least 2 to 3 serious debates on this show where women will try to propose the idea that you can have a successful relationship with the woman in the lead. I don't believe that, and I never waver from that. I know a lot of people feel differently, and that's their right. You know, just because I have a strong opinion doesn't mean that everybody has to agree with my opinion, but I'm going to still express my opinion. And I've said on this show emphatically, I have never, ever, ever seen a relationship last long term. And along with that lasting long, that was full of a high degree of romantic and sexual passion when the woman was the one in charge of the relationship, essentially where the woman was wearing the pants. I've never seen that. Now, if that type of relationship exists, then I've never seen it with my own eyes. I might have heard about it from somebody. Like there was at least one, if not 2 guests I've had on my show, female guests that tried to argue. But I've never seen a relationship that was both these two things, that was long-lasting and full of a high degree of romantic and sexual passion, where the woman was the one wearing the pants and the husband was deferring to his wife or deferring to his girlfriend. I ain't never seen that shit. Never seen that shit. Every relationship I've ever seen where the woman was the dominant partner, that relationship was either short-lived, or if it was long-lasting, the woman was usually cheating on the guy with a guy that was more dominant. So anyway, I'll say that discussion and debate for another show. Well, we probably will still talk about it, because I know from previous conversation with David X, he feels the same way. Matter of fact, I was listening to a couple of our previous episodes, and during one stretch, I know David, he said the same thing. He said he doesn't feel like a relationship will ever be successful if the woman, because among other reasons, I'm going to tell you one of the biggest reasons that I've observed, and it could be a few reasons, but if I had to just limit it to one reason, most women lose. Matter of fact, my listener Stan in the chat room, he just said it in the chat room. I was great to say, and he posted, he said, because the women lose, it's hard for a woman to respect a man when she knows that she can control that man, influence that man, and manipulate. Matter of fact, if you read my ebook and paperback version of Mode 1, I have a quote from this woman from Essence magazine. If you're not familiar with Essence, it's a very popular women's magazine in the African American community. And I have this quote from this woman from Essence magazine. And that's essentially what she said. She said the first thing she does when she meets a man is to basically see if she can control, influence, and manipulate that man. And she said, if I can, I will use him, basically use him for his money, exploit him until I get bored with him, and then I will leave him alone. And so, now I would for the most part disagree with you on that. Adrian, she in my chat room, I'm paying attention to my chat room. She says she believes both members of both genders lose respect for a companion that they can control, influence, and manipulate. No, I wouldn't 100% agree with that. Because I know men, a man will stay with a woman long term that he can control, influence. I don't know about the manipulate part. That you might have some validity when you specifically say the manipulate part, but as far as the control and influence, I've never known a man to lose interest in a woman that he could control her behavior and or influence her behavior. So, but women, yeah, they don't want no weak man. I don't know, unless a woman is just really, really super alpha and you know, she's attracted to weak beta male types. There's a few out there that are like that. There's some women, yeah, the real alpha type. But see, I did a show on that, if you remember, with Katarina Fang, this guest named Katarina Fang. Because she said she used to be an alpha female, and then she started becoming more beta because she wasn't able to attract alpha males. And see, that's the one problem I always say that alpha females have. Most alpha females want to be with an alpha male, but alpha males don't like. Alpha males aren't attracted to alpha females. You might have a handful that are, but generally speaking, an alpha male is not. Because here's the thing, and I'm limited on this conversation because I've already talked about it too long. I want to get in depth with this actually when I start talking to David X. But here's my general assertion. I've said this for years. You can't have two alphas in a relationship. And I would say similarly, you can't have two betas in a relationship. The two most fucked up relationships, in my opinion, in the dating world is a relationship that has two alphas or two betas. Reason why you can't have two alphas, when you're alpha, that means it's in your natural, it's in your nature to want to lead the relationship. At minimum, you want to lead the relationship, and at maximum, you want to flat out dominate the relationship. Either or. So if you're a person who wants to lead and or dominate the relationship, and your partner wants to do the same thing, how the fuck can you have a relationship? You can't. You cannot have a relationship. I'm telling you, here's a way you can always tell when there's two alphas in a relationship. Have you ever been around a couple and it seemed like they argue like almost like on a weekly basis? They're always arguing. That's typically a sign that you got two alphas in a relationship. And that relationship never works because both of them want to be the leader. They want to be the dominant partner. They want to be in control of the relationship. And that's why in the world of like military or politics, let's take politics. When has America ever had two co-presidents? No, They got a president and vice president because somebody got to be the beta. When you got, you don't have two co-governors. You got you got the governor and you got the lieutenant governor. Because somebody got to be the alpha, somebody got to be the beta. When you got mayors, you don't have two co-mayors. You got the mayor and the deputy mayor. You can't have somebody got to be the alpha, somebody got to be the beta. It's just that simple, you know, and that's the way it is in most relationships. Somebody got to be the alpha, and somebody got to be the beta. And so, yeah, a romantic relationship with two alphas does not work long term. And secondly, a relationship with two betas, because when you got two betas, both of them are going to be looking to be led by someone. Both the man and the woman, if they both beta, deep inside, they're going to be looking to be led. And that's going to cause that relationship to dissolve. Now, the one time you can have two betas, though, let's say you got a dominant male and he's being polyamorous or polygamous, and he got two betas that are his wives or two betas that are both his girlfriends or subs, then, yeah, you can have two betas, but they got a dominant partner. So before I get into introducing my guest for the seventh time, I wanted to touch on a couple of quick things. It's funny, out of my 3 audiobooks, my audiobook that has the highest praise has the least amount of sales. That's kind of confusing to me, but I'll accept it. And that's The Possibility of Sex. And I recently heard from a follower of mine, and he was just raving over the possibility of sex. He's actually shocked that that's not my best-selling audiobook. And no, it's not. It's actually my 3rd of the 3 audiobooks in terms of sales. But it's interesting, if you look at the reviews and ratings, Possibility of Sex is my 1 audiobook out of my 3, out of Mode 1 and Ooh Say It Again. It has no 1-star ratings, it has no 2-star ratings, and it has no 3-star ratings. It has nothing but 4-star and 5-star ratings. Like Mode 1 has at least a handful of 1-star and 2-star ratings. Same with Ooh Say It Again. Ooh Say It Again has at least a handful of 1-star and 2-star ratings. Possibility of Sex has nothing but 4 and 5-star ratings. And here's what I found interesting. This guy said about my book recently. He compared it to, and we've all experienced this. Have you ever been looking for something like, say, your watch or your smartphone, and you spend 15 minutes, a half hour looking for it, and then it usually ends up being somewhere right in front of you, like on a table or a chest right in front of you? And you say, oh, shit, I've been looking all around. It was like right in front of me the whole time. Well, that's the analogy he gave for the knowledge and wisdom that I provided in The Possibility of Sex. Without getting too lengthy, what he said was, Alan, my biggest thing with being Mode 1 is I always felt like I was being shallow with women for pursuing them just for sex. He said, like, if I was pursuing a woman to be my next long-term girlfriend, he said, I've never felt guilty about that. I've never felt shallow about that. But he said, when it comes to pursuing women for casual sex, I always felt like I was using women. But he said, what your book made me realize is that women do the same thing with us for our non-sexual companionship. And I've been saying that for years. That's what I tell men. Why should you feel guilty for pursuing a woman for strictly sexual companionship when women do the same exact thing with men for non-sex? Because if you go to my website, I basically narrow all relationships down to 3 categories. relationships with a member of the opposite sex that's going to be strictly platonic, then another relationship where it's going to be strictly sexual, and then another relationship where it's going to be a blend or a combination of sexual and non-sexual. That's what's typically referred to as a romantic relationship. When you're hooking up with a woman for both sexual and non-sexual purposes, that's romantic. But otherwise, if it ain't going to be a romantic relationship, then it's either going to be a strictly, purely platonic friendship, or it's going to be a strictly casual sex-oriented relationship. And again, my attitude is no man should ever feel shamed or feel like he's being shallow or superficial for only wanting to spend time with a woman just for sex when you got millions of women in society that will spend time with you just to have you spend money on them, or just to have you flatter them, or just to have you entertain them. The fuck? You don't think that's fucking shallow? I fucking do. I very much do. And matter of fact, you know from listening to me and reading me, I don't allow, I've said this on a number of episodes recently, I don't allow women to fucking waste my time for purely platonic shit. If a woman ain't trying to help me make more money or trying to help me improve my career, I really don't fuck with women platonically. And I say that in most seriousness. Like, some women have thought I was joking when I said that. I don't know. I don't play that shit. I mean, there's a handful of exceptions. You know, like maybe a couple women I might have went to high school or college with, or, you know, I may, you know, and even those women, I don't interact with them platonically on like a week-to-week, month-to-month basis. It might be like 2, 3, 4 times a year. But anyway, going back to this guy's compliment of the possibility of sex, he was saying that book made him realize that women will use and manipulate. Here's what I learned, and this will be my final comment about using people. I used to pursue an acting career in the late 80s, and I had this talent agent in Chicago that was getting me a number of auditions, and we were talking one day, and somehow we got on the subject of using, and he made a comment that I've never forgotten to this day. He said, there's nothing wrong with using someone. He said, I can give you literally hundreds of examples of how men and women use each other on a daily basis. Like he said, when you go to the gas station, you're not looking to develop a 10-year friendship with the gas station cashier. You're using that cashier to get your gas. When you go to a restaurant, you're not looking to become 15-year friends with the waiter or waitress. You're using that waiter or waitress to order you some food. He said the problem is not using people. He said employers use employees every day. He said the problem only happens when you're using someone and you try to pretend like you're not. That's the key comment. That is so true. He said the only time you should feel guilty for using someone is when you're using someone but you're trying to pretend that you're not. And see, that's why I'm all about more one with women. I don't use women sexually and try to pretend like I want to be their future husband. That's one thing I don't do. I don't try to get women in bed by pretending that I want to be their next long-term boyfriend or their future husband. If I know I just want sex from a woman, I have the balls to tell that woman that all I want is sex from her. Basically, I let a woman know ahead of time that I'm using her for sex. And I feel like hopefully she feels the same way. I basically only want to use women for sex who are looking to use me for sex. It's that simple. You know, when I want a one-night stand, I want to hook up with a woman who wants a one-night stand. When I want a weekend fling, I want to hook up with a woman who wants a weekend fling. If I want a long-term monogamous boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, I want to hook up with a woman who wants the same thing. If I want to get into a relationship that I think is going to lead to marriage, I want a woman who wants the same thing. That's what it's all about, man. That's what it's all about, fellas. It's all about communicating your desires and interests and intentions so that you can find out if the woman is either on the same page as you or she's not. So if you want a one-night stand and you communicate to a woman you want a one-night stand, she says, yes, I want the same thing, then that means there's no bullshit or head games being involved in that relationship. If you say, I want a friends with benefits relationship, and a woman says, yes, I want the same thing, then ain't no games or bullshit in that relationship. If you say, I want a relationship that's going to lead to marriage, and the woman says, I want the same thing, it ain't no bullshit or games in that relationship. Those are all straightforward relationships. When there's bullshit and games involved is if you want a one-night stand and a woman is looking for a next long-term boyfriend and you pretend to want to be her next long-term boyfriend when you know deep down you just want to fuck her for 1 or 2 days. See, then you bullshitting her. You're bullshitting her. And it's the same opposite, too. Women can bullshit men. It's just like, let's say you want a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship and a woman acts like she wants the same thing, but really she just wants you to be her male girlfriend or her purely platonic friend. She's bullshitting you. She ain't on the same page as you. She's bullshitting you. And that's why communication is the most important thing, particularly when you're starting out. The whole purpose for me, of upfront, straightforward communication is to find out what women are on the same page as me and what women are not. Like some people say, oh, Mo 1 is just all about casual sex. That's not true. That's not true. I know guys who have followed my Mo 1 principles that found a long-term girlfriend or found their wife. Being Mo 1 and being upfront and straightforward is all about finding who is on the same page as me. Who is on the same page as me, as opposed to pretending like you're on someone else's page when you're really not. And so anyway, that's on the possibility of sex. And now I want to touch on just a couple more issues again, then I'm going to introduce my guest for the night. If you're a part of my Facebook group, I have a private men's Facebook group. You notice there was at least a minor degree of drama in there recently. Because, like, I had one group member leave the group because he said, oh, Alan, now it seems like you all about money instead of helping guys out. Who the fuck dedicates their life to helping somebody out without getting paid in some kind of way? Unless that person's, like, so independently rich that they can do that. You know, it kills me. Not too many guys are there, but at least 2 or 3 guys that tried to recently make me feel guilty for wanting to earn a living. How the fuck am I going to help you if I can't pay my rent, if I can't pay my electricity, if I can't pay my internet? How the fuck am I going to help you? Now, if you've been a supporter of mine, you've bought all my audiobooks, you bought all my paperbacks, bought all my ebooks, you've done like 2 or 3 consultation sessions with me. I'm not talking to you. I love you guys. Let me tell you that emphatically. I love you guys. The guys who have truly supported me from day one, you bought all my books. You know, again, you've done consultation sessions with me. You know, I don't have any criticism of you guys whatsoever. But there's another percentage of guys I have that they will write me sometimes on a weekly basis, sometimes on a monthly basis, usually like in the inbox on Facebook, or they'll write me through email, and they'll ask me for this advice and that advice. And I'm like, okay, how many of my books do you own? Oh, I don't own any of your books yet. I think, I'm leaning towards getting them. What the fuck you doing asking me for advice for? Don't ask me for advice. And that might sound cold-hearted, but I'm saying, if you ain't bought not one ebook of mine, you ain't bought not one paperback of mine, you ain't bought not one audiobook of mine, don't fucking write me for advice. Don't try to get no free consultation out of me. And I can't tell you how many guys have tried to do that. And see, the thing, I put blame on myself. I've been being kind of a nice guy about it a lot of times. I won't go off on these guys. And see, now it feels like I'm going from mode 2 to mode 4 with my followers. But from you trust me, from this day forward, if you write me, and a lot of times you don't even have to tell me. I can tell by the questions you ask me that you haven't read any of my books, because the answers are right there in the books. So sometimes just by the nature of your questions, I'll say to the person, I'll say, you ain't read my books. Oh, well, yeah, I said, no, you didn't. And sure enough, they'll end up with me. It's like, okay, you're right. I was lying to you. I didn't read. I'm like, you damn right you ain't read my book yet. You are not a supporter of mine if you're not buying any of my products. I remember I heard, you've heard me mention this woman before. She's a previous guest. Her name is Alexis K. Tyler. She's from Atlanta. And I used to guest co-host on her show back in the latter part of 2008, early part of 2009. And just like you just heard me admonishing some guys, I remember one time I was a guest co-host and she went the fuck off on her followers. I mean, went the fuck off on them. But it was for the same reason. She went the fuck off on her followers because she was basically like, some of you women, yeah, y'all have truly supported me. You know, y'all bought this and that. But some of y'all ain't bought shit. And y'all be writing me letters talking about you love me and you admire me, but you ain't bought shit. And that's what I'm saying. You ain't a true supporter of me if you ain't never bought it. Again, if you have never bought at least one ebook, you've never bought at least one paperback, you've never bought at least one audiobook, you are not a supporter of mine. Don't try to tell me that you are. Don't start off saying, oh, Alan, I admire you so much and I'm a big supporter of yours. No, you're not. No, you're not. And along with that, and this will be my final note before I introduce my guest. And matter of fact, my guest is related to this because I was listening to past episodes, interviews with David X. And there was one stretch, and he said this when we were together in London. He said, picking a dating coach is like, you know, shopping for a car or looking for a doctor. You know, you do your shop. You have your shopping stage where you talk to, say, a bunch of doctors and find out what they're about and what they have to offer. But then at some point, you choose one doctor. Name somebody you know that has two general practitioners. Name somebody. Name somebody that has two general practitioners. There might be 1% of the society who does that. Most people, when it comes to a doctor, they got one general practitioner, and then for specialized needs, that general practitioner refers them to someone. Like if they need special needs with their heart or their ears or their eyes or their feet, they get referred to a specialist. But nobody has multiple general practitioners. Same with like personal trainers. I don't know anybody who has multiple personal trainers. Similar to the doctors, there might be some people who might have one overall personal trainer, and then they have specialists who specialize in, say, building up the arms or building up the chest. But, you know, if I own a car dealership and I'm a Mercedes, let's say I own a Mercedes car dealership, you know, I want you to test drive my car so that I can sell you that car. And if you tell me that you're undecided, I'm going to recommend that you go test drive a Jaguar and go test drive a BMW and whatever other car so that you can compare what those cars have to offer to what my car has to offer. But ultimately, I want you to either make a decision to buy my Mercedes, or if you feel like that's not the car for you, make a decision about the Jaguar or make the decision about a BMW. But I'm having an issue similar to people not supporting me, and this is an issue I've talked about a number of times, so this is not my first or second time talking about this. And again, I know David X feels the same way. I'm tired of people writing me and saying, hey, Alan, hey, how's it going, man? I'm a supporter of you, but hey, I just want to know, what do you think about Neil Strauss? He recently said in Time Magazine, XYZ, ABC, blah, blah, blah. Why the fuck do I care about Neil Strauss? Hey, Alan, man, I was reading, Roosh. He said on Twitter, he said XYZ, ABC. I just want to get your opinion on what he said. Why the fuck do I care about Roosh? If you're not asking me about an opinion on something I said, then don't ask me about anybody else, especially somebody that's indirect. Like David X, I wouldn't mind actually, and I'm not just saying this to flatter him, but since he's on my show tonight, like David X is somebody I wouldn't mind you asking me, because we're kind of like two peas in a pod. We got a handful of minor philosophical differences here and there on a couple things, but overall we're very similar. So I generally don't mind people asking me about David X, because we're both what I would call direct guys. But when you're asking me my opinion on guys who I consider to be indirect, I don't give a fuck about them. I really don't. I don't give a fuck about anybody who's teaching indirect shit. Because you know why? Among other reasons, anybody who's teaching you indirect shit, what they're doing is just reinforcing your fear of rejection, and they're reinforcing your fear of negative reactions from women. That's one of the major differences between direct guys and indirect guys. All the indirect advice you get, it all centers on trying to prevent and avoid rejection and trying to prevent and avoid criticisms, insults, and negative reactions. I don't teach men to avoid those things. Because as you know from my many stories of seducing women, I fucked women after they cursed me out. I've had my dick sucked after a woman called me an asshole or a jerk or had a negative reaction. Have these other guys? That's what you need to ask yourself. These other guys, you ask me their opinion. How many of those guys have gotten their dick sucked in a grocery store 10 minutes after meeting a woman? How many of those guys have had a woman curse them out at 9 o'clock and sucking their dick at 9:25? You ask them that. Are they giving you all this indirect advice? Motherfuckers ain't on my level. Anyway, with that said, I'm going to play another quick intermission that features David X clips from his past interviews with me, and then I will bring him on right after this ends. So don't go anywhere. I will be right back.
Let him fuck who he wants to fuck. I'm all for fucking who you want to fuck. These women that want a guy to lead around by their neck are the same women that buy poodles when they're 60 years old, okay? They buy these little fucking poodles that they lead around. If you want to be that kind of man, I tell them, go ahead. You know, if you live a facade and you show, and you, yes dear, no dear, yes dear, and you leave the house, my fucking bitch wife is pissing me off. If you act like that, you're going to be treated like that. But women don't want that kind of man. That's the kind of guy that you always get them coming and telling you, well, she told me if I'll change, she'll stay. Change to what? If you don't show her who you are at the beginning, what do you have to change into? We are, whether you want to admit it or not, another species of animal that lives on this planet. And all we're meant to do all our lives is two things. Eat chicken wings and fuck. That's all we're supposed to do. Eat and fuck. Oh. And if you go back to all the animal species, most species, the male is the dominant protector. The females are the nurturers and the food gatherers, such as lions with their pride, buffalo, steer, horses, herds of horses. You have one head stallion, cavemen, nature. If the women are dominant, the species will die. The more the women are dominant, the more gays you have coming out of the closet. The statistics are there. I happen to have been very happy when they were all in the fucking closet. What do they have to come out for?
Man, you are killing me, dude. Oh, man. David X, somebody wrote in my chat room, they said, David X is off the chain.
You know why blowjobs were invented?
Oh, Lord, this is going to be interesting. Why were blowjobs invented?
Because if you started getting a blowjob when you were drunk, you don't have to look at her face.
Oh, man, you were too much.
Listen, what's the key situation here? Guys want to get laid. Guys want blowjobs. Guys want to fuck another broad because they want another broad, not because they're not in love with their wife. And I can totally relate to these guys. Why did I like fucking so many different women? Because I did. That's all. You have to know your limitations. And men are more sensitive than women in general. They don't want to admit it. because they got a very big ego. It's a fragile ego. Women are very emotionally secure compared to men, and they know how to manipulate. That's what, like Alan Roger Curry says, you have to listen. You might hear the words, but very few people besides me and him really listen to what we're saying. The key is there. We're not telling you anything that you shouldn't know, but you hear it, but you don't know it. You don't absorb it. Yeah. As soon as you get manipulated, you lose your confidence. You lose your confidence. I've known guys to go into depressions for years. I didn't let these women manipulate me. When they started manipulating me or giving me ultimatums, I tell them, baby, it's my way or the highway. You don't like it? There's plenty of women out there. It's just a matter of numbers. If you have that, you have to stand by what you feel good about. You say you feel good about being honest, stick with it. Who cares what the other guys are thinking? They're probably going to be jealous of you. I wouldn't care what the other guys are thinking. I don't give a shit. Worry about what you're doing. You're thinking too much about everybody else but yourself. Rule number 2, you're the most important person in the relationship, not everybody else you're thinking about. You're thinking about the girl you haven't met. You're thinking about your friends that aren't even there yet. When you're talking to a woman, there's 2 things going through your mind. I want to fuck her, and is she going to make me feel stupid? With me, it's only I want to fuck her, I want to fuck her, I want to fuck her. I'm never worried about her feeling stupid, but that's what's going through their minds.
We now return to my interview with attraction expert and seduction guru David X on Upfront and Straightforward with Alan Roger Curry, right here on the Blog Talk Radio Internet Radio Network.
Welcome back to my 5th episode of my 9th season on Blog Talk Radio, Upfront and Straightforward. I want to give some shout-outs real quick to my chat room. I got Charles D. in my chat room. I got one of my rare female friends, since I was talking about that earlier, Adrian, a.k.a. Diva362636. She is a genuine good female friend of mine. I got a number of guests. I got my man Jazz Kaz. Jazz Kaz is in my chat room. That's my man. I got Let's Go Zero. Let's Go Zero. I got my other main man, Sean. But matter of fact, Sean Benet is from Canada, which is where David X is from. I got my man Stan. 145744444. Stan, it was interesting. The other week, Stan had like 2 other guys that called in from his same area code, but they said they weren't all boys. That was interesting. And then I got what I would like to say is a new user to my chat room, Tulsa Reeves. There's a saying that goes, my next guest needs no introduction. So I'm not really going to give him any type of lengthy introduction because most of my listeners, they know who this guy is. Like I said at the beginning, this will be his 7th time on my show. And that's a show record. Nobody, I think the second most is, I've had one person that's been on my show as many as 5 times, and a couple others that's been on my show as many as 4 times. But this will be his 7th time on my show. First time in 3 years. The last time he was on my show was the first Thursday in 2012. Some people have nicknamed him the Godfather of Natural Seduction, and one other nickname I've heard of him is the grandfather of being direct with women. So, see, he got a couple nicknames. I got a couple nicknames. It's funny, I got to give you the quick backstory, and most of you know this. How I first heard him, I used to post on this message board called directmethod.com. Directmethod.com. That was primarily where I posted most of 2006, and I want to say just about all of 2007. I think I stopped posting them there sometime around 2008. But anyway, there would be certain guys who would come on the message board, and when they would become familiar with my bugs and my general philosophies, they would say, "Oh, okay, so you're just like David X then." Then another guy would say, "Hey, Alan, I just read your book, man. It was a good book. You know, you're real similar to this guy named David X." And I kind of got an attitude. I was like, "Who the fuck is David X? Why do people keep comparing me to him?" So finally, this one guy said, "Hey, man, Alan, I'm going to give you a free copy of David's ebook." It was called, I want to say it was called Be Relentless. And I read his ebook. I was all ready to just shred it to pieces. I said, I know he's going to have a bunch of indirect shit in here and manipulative shit in here. And so I was just ready to tear it apart. And then I kept reading each chapter. I would end up saying, okay, yeah, I agreed with just about everything he said. Okay, next chapter. Then I'll read the next chapter. I'll be like, oh, okay. I agree with probably 98% of the shit he said in there. And almost every chapter, I would say, my general sense, I would say no less than 95% of the stuff he said in his ebook, I ended up agreeing with him. And that was one of the first times that had happened. So I told somebody, I said, I'm going to have to get this guy on my show. Because he thinks like me. He gets it. You know, I would probably say the single biggest thing is that in his ebook, he never encouraged men to lie to women or engage in misleading or manipulative head games with women to get the pussy. He was all about just being direct, like me. And so the first two times he was on my show, he had two of my top 3 most listened to episodes were by David X. And to this day, 3 of my top 10 most listened to episodes were those with David X. So, without further ado, on behalf of the Blog Talk Radio Internet Radio Network and Upfront and Straightforward, for the 7th time, give a warm welcome for my good friend, David X.
Thank you.
What's up, buddy?
I've been listening in, and you're playing all my clips, and I say to myself, I forget who I'm listening to because I'm concentrating on what you're saying, and then I hear a clip, and it's funny when you listen to your own voice, you don't recognize it. And all of a sudden, I'm saying, everything this guy is saying is exactly what I think. And then I realize it's me.
Now, how can you not recognize that rough, raspy voice you got?
I gotta tell you something, okay? The reason you are probably the only person in this business that I talk to, not only respect, is because, it's a funny thing. I could comment on everything you said before, and when you said, why should I even consider about these other guys? I'll tell you why you shouldn't. Very simply. And I tell my students, you want to go to somebody else, go anywhere you want. But stick with the guy you go with. All these guys all of them are full of shit. They all come out with new systems and new lines and new gimmicks. And then the guys who you refer to as beta males, who instead of getting a set of balls, they decide to listen to these guys. And these guys go, I'll buy his this, and you listen, he says there's tricks, there's words you say, there's gimmicks. And these guys lap it up and buy it, and they go, and when they don't succeed, they're always so, well, you didn't do it the right way. You didn't do it right. So all these guys now, all they feel is, they did something wrong. They get more depressed. If they meet a girl, they're going to even do everything in their world to have her like them. And you can't. You can't have somebody like you. Now, I don't talk bad about women. I love women. I enjoy their bodies. I enjoy the smell, the touch. And when we're together, what we can do together to make each other feel fabulous is a wonderful thing. And I think everybody should enjoy that. And I have to tell you something. In the last while, I've sort of changed my attitude about gay people. It's a little different, but not much. It's like, do what you want, but don't do it in front of me. And they can do what they want. If they can enjoy each other's bodies like I can enjoy a woman, God bless them. Do what you want, but I don't want to see it. That's all.
Oh, man.
There's a lot of guys out there who are alpha males. You see, I agree with you. I don't use that term because a lot of guys, and I see this with the young guys, they're alpha males, but they're afraid to be. I'm getting stories right now. What if I say hi to her, I like her body, she's going to call the police and say I molested her. I go, I've had only in like 273 students, I've had only one guy who approached a woman and she called the police on him. And I got to tell you something. If the guy was standing in front of me, I'd probably smack him in the head because he doesn't do things the right way. He doesn't have a right attitude. Because it's one thing to compliment a woman, and it's one thing to put them on edge, make them feel uncomfortable. Because I believe, and I strongly believe this, to get any woman to sleep with you, you have to make her feel comfortable. And you're not going to make her feel really comfortable if you're an alpha male, so she'll go out with you for 2 years, make you buy her and give her and bring her, and then she might let you fuck her. If that's what you want, go for it. But if you really want somebody, you tell them what you want. That's all I'm saying. Be honest enough with yourself and the woman to tell them what you want. If they don't want what you want, fine. Look for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Women want the same thing we want because otherwise we'd be less people every year.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know if you heard me say my, intro stuff, but that's one of the things I said is that what I believe, and I tell my male clients and supporters is that I believe for every desire, interest, and attention you have, there's at least minimum one woman on this earth who has the same exact desire, interest, and attention you have. And
I'm gonna tell you a story, okay?
Mm-hmm.
This happened to me in my early 20s, and I went out with this girl, and she was really kinky, but her father had passed away and left her a fortune. She had properties in every major city, and she used to travel between the properties. And I went out with her, and I said, I took her out on a date, but I didn't like her. The first night I said, this broad is weird, and I didn't like her. I didn't want to continue. It's one that I had a bad feeling about. So I take her home after the first date. Very nice. Goodbye. She says, will you call me? I says, I'll call you, but I don't think I'm going to pursue this relationship further because she wasn't my type in any way, shape, or form. She was very attractive, but there was nothing really that I really was crazy about her, and I hated her personality. I thought she was a bitch. And she started calling me and she started bothering me. And at that time, I used to travel a lot to New York City. So she sends over to my office a couple of tickets in an envelope in New York City. So she's trying to be nice to me. So I'm going to New York 1 year in New York. You're alone, you either go to a place, a bar. So it was like a club. So I go there. I go in there, and I couldn't believe what was going on. It woke up stuff in me that you can't imagine. The place was called Plato's Retreat. They had sex acts in the audience, would go with the stage members, and it was a huge, wild orgy party.
Wow.
So when I got back to home, I called her up. I said, thank you for the tickets, but I don't know if I would go there again. It was like a little bit too wild for me. Guys are trying to stick their dick up my ass for Christ's sake. It was like I was more on guard than being forward, And I was naive. I was young. And she told me she loves those places. She knows those places in every city. And I couldn't believe that goes on everywhere. And you know what that means? It means there's crazier people like me. I like making love, and I like making love with a woman who wanted to make love. I like twosomes. I did threesomes. I liked all that kind of things.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Yeah, but I got to tell you something. After a while, you finish playing those things. The funny thing is, I remember this girl and I were really close. She was in my harem, and I was looking to really get rid of her because I was getting tired of her. And it came to the time where we weren't fucking as much, and I said to her, we need to spice up our relationship. I said, why don't you go out and find a girl that you want to bring into our group? At first she started looking funny at me, and then all of a sudden she liked it. And she picked up another girl and got her to come in with us, and I was having the time of my life. It was a whole different setup. It was like the chemistry was all different now. I've got these two women in my bed. It was great. And then that relationship changed, and I'm back with my girlfriend, and she says to me, can we move in together? And I look at her and I tell her, and this came out of my mind without even thinking, the relationship I had with you, I would never want to settle down with a woman like you.
Wow. You were straightforward.
Because, that's what I thought. I don't want, and you know what? Yes, I got to tell you something. I use this, and I tell this to a lot of people sometimes. If I was the woman, everybody would think I was the biggest slut in the world. Okay? And when I see a girl that's a porcupine, I'm not interested, I'm looking at them like they're a porcupine. You know what a porcupine is, eh?
Oh, yeah, with all those spiky whatever.
No. If she had as many dicks on her as she had in her, she'd look like a porcupine.
That's cold. That's cold. Oh. So, David, let me ask you. I mentioned to my listeners that you don't really use the terms alpha male and beta male as much as you tend to describe it as men who lead and men who follow. My first question would be, since you're an older guy, you've experienced a lot, observed a lot, would you say in today's dating climate there are far more men who are willing to be led by women than there are men who want to lead women?
I tell you, you're probably 100% right. But those men that want to be led by women, I think they want to be led for a couple of reasons. I'd have to say subheadings. And
okay.
Some of them want to be alpha males, but like I said, they're afraid to try it. They're afraid. They're worried and worried about what could happen. And it's like I tell them, what could happen? She's not going to beat you with a stick. What do you think could happen? Nothing. There's the real problem. Nothing could happen. You could enjoy everything perfectly, or you could be following her around. And I tell you, you're right. I tell everybody the same thing. There's only 3 positions you can be with a woman: lead, follow, or get out of the way. That's it. And women, what I found, I'll tell you honestly, what I found, women want a man who knows where he's going and knows what he wants. And I'll tell you another thing. The women feel more comfortable with an alpha male, as you call it, than a beta male. They might like it at the beginning, but I've never seen one of those relationships last, like you said. I've never, ever seen an alpha male relationship last. I was out with somebody this evening, and we were talking about something, and I was asking this young lady about her family, and she says, she comes from Peru, and she grew up there. I go, yes. I go, are your parents still together? That's what you ask today. You don't ask, how are your parents or what are they? No, they split up a few years back. And I go, and I hear like this, my father got fed up of being told what to do. I've heard that so many times. After a while, your dick gets softer. You start thinking clear. You got a secretary at the office who's giving you blowjobs under your desk. All of a sudden, the wife is no good anymore because she's been bitching at you for 20 years. I had another friend. His daughter got married, and the weekend his daughter got married, he's sitting the following Sunday at the table. He's having breakfast with his wife, and she's talking and jabbering, and he's got the newspaper in his hand. He looks at her and goes, I took this for 20 years while our daughter was here. I don't have to take this anymore. He put down the newspaper, took the car keys and left the house, left everything behind that wasn't worth going back for anything. And he never went back again.
Wow.
Okay, I've seen stories like that all the time because guys could be miserable a lifetime or happy for a lifetime. If you're an alpha male and you meet the right female, she doesn't have to be alpha or beta because I don't care what they are, as long as we have the relationship that I want. My relationship's the way I want it. If that woman doesn't want to be with me, I don't want to beat her, I don't want to hurt her, I don't want to insult her. I'm out one day with a bunch of friends, and my friend's wife is talking badly about him. Oh, he's so terrible. He doesn't do anything in the house, and she's complaining about this and that. And my girlfriend I was with, she looks at me and she wanted to say something. I said, listen, if you talk about me like she talks about him, I'll throw you right out of this restaurant right now.
Yeah, I always say, I've been telling men this for literally years. One thing I say to men all the time is one of the weakest things you can ever do as a man, and my male listeners, if you're listening right now, I'm going to tell you if you don't know this already, one of the weakest things you could ever do as a man is to constantly whine and complain about a woman's behavior, but yet you're staying with that woman. What the fuck you with a woman for that makes you... Like, I've had some buddies like this. They'll be whining and complaining about their wife pretty much like on a weekly basis. Or if they're not married, I've had guys that have a long-term girlfriend, but they always complain about their behavior. I'm like, why the fuck you still with her then? Why the fuck are you still with a woman? And it's usually because, to me, the only guys who really do that are beta males. Because like you said, David, you said if you was ever with a woman that was exhibiting behavior that you didn't care for, you done with her. And that, to me, that's how pretty much all alpha males, guys who are leaders, operate. They don't stay with women that get on their nerves. They usually give them one warning, and then if that woman doesn't adhere to that one warning, they gone. That woman's gone. But see, beta males, they take a lot of shit from women, women being bitches and yelling at them and nagging them and shit. I can't stand to have any male friend or male acquaintance of mine that always says, hey, man, can I tell you about my wife, man? She's such a bitch. I said, no, I don't want to hear that shit. I don't want to hear that shit.
Listen, I'll tell you something. I've got two male friends, good friends. One of them, okay, he's married with two kids in his early 40s, and he's got so fed up of his wife bitching at him that now he goes out golfing every single day in the summertime. And they're fighting because he's golfing, and he picks up, he's got 20 hobbies. I go like, when do you have time for anybody? You got too many hobbies. You're doing too many things. And he says, well, it keeps my wife out of my hair. It keeps my wife out of my hair.
Wow. That's sad.
And then I got another friend. He split up twice from his girlfriend in the last 10 years. The first time he split up, he took an apartment, and he was paying half the rent from her apartment, and every weekend he'd take her out for dinner. And I says, you're not living alone. You didn't split up. You're going to end up going back with her. He goes, no, and then he goes back with her. Lives a year with her, now they split up again. Had to rent another apartment. The financial losses are astronomical. You know what? All your listeners should do something and try to pick up one of these shows or tape it or record it. I don't know, whatever you do today. It's on TV. It's Judge Judy. Judge
Judy, yeah, I know that.
Judge Mathis. I like him. I like that guy. He's got a great sense of humor. He reminds me of you. I like
really?
the guy. He's real direct. I like him. And you listen to these stories that come there. All these guys go out with women, borrow money, don't pay the women back, dump the women. And they go after these guys because they want them back, or they go after and break their windows, key his car. They're crazy. And you listen to this, and all these guys are the guys that think like us. They don't give a shit about the women, but they're not nice guys. You see, it's a difference. They're ripping off these girls all the time. It's one after the other now. These guys are ripping off these women because these women want alpha males. These guys are the extreme alphas. They don't care about anybody but themselves. They don't get emotional with the women. That's it. And these women go after them, and they're not stupid women. They're not ugly women. They're some gorgeous women. You wouldn't believe what they look like. And they're going after these guys. If they would meet an honest guy who would want to be with them, that would be like a fantastic relationship you could have. They only want to be with a guy who knows what he wants. But these guys are out ripping them off.
Interesting.
And that's what the reality is. I look at these shows and I say to myself, Jesus, every second guy is trying to rip that girl off. Borrowed money from her and doesn't want to give it back. They're borrowing money, doesn't want to give it back. That's all they cared about. They weren't even cool about fucking them. That was their sideline.
Well, you know what I tell women, just like I tell men, and these women you describe them, I got to be honest, I don't really have much empathy, because my thing is this: I go by that adage, the old adage, fool me once, shame on you; fool me twice, shame on me. I always tell guys, and I tell women I know, if somebody exhibits undesirable and or disrespectful behavior towards you once, you can give them a pass. I'd even go as far as say if they do it twice, you can use the halfway valid excuse. Well, I thought it was just a one-time thing. I thought they would change and improve. But to men and women listening to this show right now, if somebody is exhibiting behavior that's just generally undesirable, disrespectful, blatantly exploitive, and or manipulative, if they exhibit that type of behavior 3 or more times towards you, that's your fault. The first 2 times, yeah, you can criticize the other person for being a bad person. But once it gets to the 3rd instance or more, that's your fault because you're allowing that. You can't say you didn't know because they've already done it once or twice before. So if you didn't know that or that didn't resonate with you before, let it resonate with you now. Anybody you're dealing with, if you're a man dealing with women who are of questionable quality, or if you're a woman dealing with men who are of questionable quality, if you see them exhibit their questionable character and integrity once, and definitely if you see them exhibit it twice, after the second time, leave them the fuck alone. Drop them like a hot potato. Just leave them the fuck alone. Because that's going to be bad news. So I've heard you tell me before, and I know I've dealt with a lot of guys like this. There's a lot of guys who will refer to you as the father they never had or the older brother they never had. And I've had a lot of guys, my clients, do the same thing. Do you think the lack of fathers being active in their sons' lives is hurting a lot of men's formative years and their development in terms of developing some balls and backbone?
100%. You know, I'll tell you something. A lot of guys, they had nobody to talk to when they're growing up. And I got to tell you something. This is what I tell everybody. It's not your father's fault. It's the way he was and the way his father was. And it turned out the fact that you're coming to me today and wanting my help means you're going to change the routine that stayed in your family. You know, you have a lot of guys, and I tell them, look, if you're an alpha male, you're strong. And if you're strong, you have to put all that behind you. Now you got to say, that's what I came from, that's what I was, this is what I am. And go for what you want. If you decide to go for what you want, you go for it. When I look at a woman, I look at her body. Oh, I like that body. Then I think of myself, well, nice, cute face, you know. And I think, what position would I like to do her in, you know? You know, and I look at her and I go, oh, I know exactly how she's going to orgasm, you know. And it was like my MO. I was able to orgasm at the same time or just a little after they started. I trained myself. That's what my kick was. And making them feel good, making them really feel good made me feel better. Now, I never hit a woman in my life. I never found the need for it. If they're driving me so crazy, I got to get away. That's all. Get away. They tell you should have just walked out. Yeah, walk out. I don't say I should have, could have. No, I did it. I left.
Yeah, I agree with that. I can say the same thing. I've never hit a woman, but there was at least one woman. As Chris Rock said one time, Chris Rock said, "I never hit a woman. I never hit a woman." Then he paused, but then he said, "But I'll shake the shit out." He said, "I'll shake the shit out." I'll be like, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" But yeah, there was at least one woman. I shook the shit out of her because she threatened my life, yeah. But no, I ain't never done a Ray Rice on a woman. Because
there's exceptions to every rule, of course. I mean, if somebody's coming at you violently and you have to protect yourself, it's a different story.
True. Yeah, that's true.
But what I'm saying is like this: I don't go out when I see a woman with the idea I'm going to hurt her. My motto is, I'm going to spend some quality time with a person and put a smile on both our faces. That's what it's all about.
So when you hear stories about these guys like George Sodini and Elliot Rodger, are you familiar with those two guys?
I'm not, and I try not to be. To be honest with you, I don't care what these guys do. They're all full of shit. I don't care what I've seen it. I've seen guys have called me up and said, I'd like to, I'd like you to endorse me, and I listen to their stuff. And I talked to the guy for a while, and right away I figured out he's full of shit. And I tell him, I can't.
Oh, no, these two guys I'm talking about, they're not fellow dating coaches. What they are, George Sodini was a guy who in 2009, he was romantically and sexually frustrated, and as a result, he went into a health and fitness place and just shot up a bunch of women. And Elliot Rodger was a young guy in Santa Barbara who similarly, he wrote this manifesto emphasizing his romantic and sexual frustration with women, and he became so hateful towards women that he went and killed some as well as some guys before killing himself. And so what I was going to ask you is if you hear stories about guys becoming so romantically and sexually frustrated that they turn to doing murder-suicides, what are some of your first thoughts when you hear these stories?
Well, I've had a couple of cases where I won't even help a guy if he's a stalker or he wants to hurt women. So I had this one case of this guy. He was like telling me he liked this girl since high school, and she never would talk to him and never go out with him. And he's been chasing her since high school, and she's put a couple of restraining orders, and she moved away to California from New York, and he followed her there. And she put restraining orders on him there. And he says, how can I get her to like me? I tell him, listen, leave her alone. Leave her alone. The woman changed her whole life to get away from you, and you're chasing her. And he got mad at me, and he started, calling me up and hanging up on my 800 number to piss me off, which didn't piss me off. I don't give a shit, but he got mad at me because I wouldn't help him hurt this woman. I told him, go to the police and tell them you need help because you're crazy. But look, I read all the same thing. There was just a case, I think it was in California, where a guy killed his wife, his baby, and himself. I mean, life is a beautiful thing. Yeah, I'm getting older and I'm appreciating it even more. So life's a beautiful thing. For people just to waste, and it's a waste your life and bring people down and hurt people. I don't, my son will tell you if I say that, he says, you're not allowed to use that word today. They're mental cases, I think they're mental cases. To me, they're mental cases. He goes, you can't use those words today. I tell him, they're mental cases. You can't use them. I mean, I'm going to use them,
Speaking of that, Dave, I got to play this clip, man, because of all your clips, man, this one cracked me up the most. You used the word mental case. Here's a clip, listeners, from when David X was on my show the very first time in January of 2009.
I said, did you ever fuck her in 2 years? He goes, no. I go, well, I'll tell you, there's two things here. One, you're a mental case. Number two, she's a real bitch. Because she didn't think in 2 years, once he wants to fuck me, I don't believe she's that stupid. So she was using you for 2 years. She's not. She's a smart bitch, but she's a bitch. You like that one? That was my first.
That cracks me the fuck up, man. He said she's a smart bitch, but she's a bitch. Matter of fact, before you go on, David, listeners, I got to tell you this quick funny thing. When we were in London, as you know, listeners from reading my books, I divide women into 4 categories, which is reciprocators, rejectors, wholesome pretenders, and manipulative time wasters. And a manipulative time waster, most of you know, but in case you don't, that's basically what I describe as a woman who knows you want to fuck her, but she doesn't want to fuck you, but she will not straightforwardly tell you that she doesn't want to fuck you. She'll lead you on to believe that there's the possibility that you're going to be able to fuck her, which is why the title of my second audiobook is called The Possibility of Sex. These women want you to believe there's at least the possibility you can fuck them, but deep down they know they're not going to give you the pussy. So I call those manipulative time wasters. So when we were in London, I was talking about those terms, and somebody heard me talking about those terms, so they asked David. They said, hey, David, since Alan calls those manipulative time wasters, like, what's your terminology for a woman in that category? And David said, oh, it's simple. That's a bitch. He said, I just call women like that a bitch. That's a bitch.
But you know something? I'll tell you something. They know they're bitches. That's the funny part. It's not like it's a secret to them either. And I got to tell you something. I don't believe there's a woman out there when there's a guy that's interested in her, either he's talking to her, buying her coffee, doesn't think he wants to do me. I can't believe that they don't know exactly why we're talking to them. Why do they get sexy? They know exactly what they want.
Matter of fact, now I got to talk about 2 more quick stories to my listeners. Now, some of you all, by now, you've seen the clips from when we were in London together. That was actually my first time meeting David X in person. I had a great time with David. We ended up going to Amsterdam. But 2 other quick stories related to when we were in London together. One was along the lines of what we were just talking about. There was this one woman on stage with us named Sophie. And at first, Sophie said, Alan, with all due respect to your Mode 1 philosophy, I don't need a man to let me know verbally that he wants to fuck me. I already know when I first meet a man, when he approaches me or flirts with me, I already know he wants to fuck me, so you don't have to verbally say it. And I just looked at the audience, like, with an expression that basically said, I guarantee you she's going to contradict that statement later on. I didn't say that, but that was kind of my expression. And so the audience, some people chuckled. So David and I got to talking to this woman. Sure enough, about, I want to say roughly 15, 20 minutes later, she started talking about this male friend of hers. I can't remember the guy's name. Let's call him Christopher. She said, yeah, I got this good friend, Christopher. He's so good to me. He's such a good friend, and blah, blah, blah. And David says, so why haven't you fucked Christopher yet? And she's like, excuse me, I beg your pardon? David's like, why haven't you fucked him yet? I mean, you just said a few minutes ago, you know, as soon as a guy approaches you and flirts with you, that he wants to fuck you, so why haven't you fucked this guy yet? And she started fumbling over words, and I just looked at the audience for a second time, and they just start cracking up, because I knew she was going to contradict herself. Because, see, on one end, she started off saying, I don't need a guy to verbalize his desires, interests, and intentions to me, because I already know what his desires, interests, and intentions are. But then when we asked her about her good platonic friend, Christopher, her excuse was, well, he never said he wanted to fuck me. He never let me know he wanted to fuck me. And me and David look at each other like, bitch, what the fuck are you talking about? Then the final quick story I'll tell you, and somebody just brought this up in the chat room. There was a point when we were talking to these same two women. One name was Sophie. I can't remember the other woman's name. We're talking about, just dealing with women, and a lot of it was really sexually provocative. And at one point, you remember this day, you just said very calmly, you said, I know for a fact that both of your pussies are wet. I can smell it. And the funniest thing, listeners, neither one of these women denied it. I mean, you would have thought at least one of them would say, no, that's not true. My pussie's not wet. They just sat there quietly, like kind of smiling to themselves. But that was one of the classic moments of you, David, that whole weekend. You're like, I know both of your pussies are wet. I can smell them. They didn't say shit, man. They didn't try to deny that shit, nothing.
And they crossed their legs.
Man. You said what?
And they crossed their legs right after I said that, remember?
Yeah, they sure did. You remember that? Yeah, they sure did. They sure did. Hey, listeners, if you want to call in with a question for David X or a comment related to the conversation we're having, you can call in 646-478-5710. And when you call in, you have to, like I see about 20 people in my phone queue, but only one person has that signal. You got to press the number 1. That gives me a signal to know you have something to say. Otherwise, I will assume you're just listening. Okay? So when you call, if you're already in the phone queue, if you want to ask a question, make a comment, press number 1. If you're about to call in, as soon as you call in, press the number 1. That lets me know you have a question and or a comment. Right now, the two numbers I see that have a question or comment is area code 778 and area code 615. Area code 778 and area code 615. And then there's probably about another 12 or 13 people in my phone queue that look to be just listening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an intermission break and let David get a swig of water, and I'll be back in about 4.5, 5 minutes. And when I come back, I'm going to start taking phone calls. I'm going to take 778 and I'm going to take 615. So don't go anywhere. I'll be right back.
Mode 1.
Oh, say it again.
Ooh, say it again.
Attention, single men. Are you tired of women who you find attractive, placing you in the dreaded friend zone for an indefinite period of time? Are you dreadfully afraid of using sexually provocative language and X-rated words with women in your very first conversation with them? If you answered yes to one or more of the aforementioned questions, then I would strongly suggest that you visit audible.co.uk or audible.com right now and download author Alan Roger Curry's latest audiobook entitled Ooh, Say It Again, Mastering the Fine Art of Verbal Seduction and Oral Sex. In this audiobook, Alan will first teach you how to overcome and eliminate outdated, ineffective beliefs and attitudes that are holding you back and preventing you from presenting yourself to women as a man who is confident, highly self-assured, and verbally smooth and seductive. Not only does Alan provide you with very specific instructions on how to improve the effectiveness of your voice and your overall conversation skills in part 1 of the audiobook, but once you progress to part 2 of the audiobook, you are most certainly in for a treat. Alan, aka the King of Verbal Seduction, features 6 verbal seduction stories that are based on his real-life interactions and provocative conversations with women from his past. Oh my God. The first 3 verbal seduction stories left me so aroused that my pussy is literally dripping wet. Oh. Here is a hot, arousing excerpt from part 2 of the King's audiobook.
You and I should be going to church tomorrow instead of standing here talking about fucking.
Instead of standing here talking about what?
You fucking me.
Who wants to fuck you?
You want to fuck me, Alan.
Oh, say it again.
You want to fuck me, Alan.
Oh, where do you want my dick?
In my pussy.
Oh, say, oh.
Oh.
Oh, say it again.
Oh.
Tell me how wet I got that pussy.
It's so wet.
Oh, say it again.
You say my pussy's so wet.
The king is such a dynamic instructor and professional dating coach that you will feel like he is in the room with you, giving you a one-on-one training session with the king himself. Don't you want to gain the power to get a woman's pussy wet with just the smooth seductiveness of your voice? I mean, don't you? And ladies, do not be misled into believing that the King's audiobook is strictly for male listeners. Not at all. As a woman, you will enjoy the entertaining insight that Alan provides in part 1 of the audiobook. And I can almost guarantee you that your cute, beautifully trimmed and shaven pussies will soon become extremely wet after listening to the King's smooth, seductive voice. Oh, speaking of wet pussies, if you'll excuse me, I'm about to play with my pussy as I continue listening to the King's erotically dominant voice. Oh. Visit www.mode1.net as well as audible.co.uk or audible.com right now.
We now return to my interview with attraction expert and seduction guru David X on Upfront and Straightforward with Alan Roger Curry, right here on the Blog Talk Radio Internet Radio Network.
Welcome back to another episode of Upfront and Straightforward with Alan Roger Curry. And this is my 5th episode of my 9th season of Upfront and Straightforward. And I want to thank all you regular, semi-regular, and occasional listeners for supporting my show. In my chat room, I see Mr. Confidence. I'm going to call him Mode 1 Confidence. He got another name, but I'm going to say Mode 1 Confidence. I got Mode 1 Confidence in my chat room. I got Charles D in my chat room. I got Diva 362636. Now, realistically, she probably watching one of her favorite shows because she loves the shows that come on Thursday night. But I appreciate her pretending like she's still listening and in my chat room. That's my girl, Adrian. I got a number of guests in my chat room. And I got my man Jazz. You always notice I drop my voice when I say his username. Jazz Kaz. I got Let's Go Zero. I got Sean Benet from Canada, just like David X. I got my man Stan 14757444444. Stan cracks me up when he calls in, man. He never minces words when he calls into my show. You never hear Stan call my show and just start beating around the bush and just rambling. He'll call in and say, "Hey, what's your guest name? Linda? Okay, you seem like you're kind of a bitch, and I just want to tell you that, and all the shit you were saying was just total bullshit." Stan cracks me up. I got Tulsa Reeves in my chat room, and now I am going to hit the phone, open up my phone lines to my listeners again. If you want to call in, you need to do two things. Number one, you need to call in to 646-478-5710. And once you call in, you need to press the number one. The number one, that's what lets me know you have a question or a comment. Otherwise, I will assume you're just listening. Like I said, I got about 13, 14 people in my phone queue, but only 2 of them have pressed the number 1. Oh, if you tuned in late, I forgot to mention. If you tuned in late, my guest tonight is a guest. This is not his second time on my show, not his third time on my show, not his 4th, 5th, or even 6th time on my show. This is his 7th time. More times than any other guest I've had. This is his 7th time on my show. His name is David X. He is an attraction and expert and a seduction guru and overall dating coach. And he and I are very, very similar. We might have, 2 or 3 areas where we differ slightly, but overall, we're basically, we don't believe in teaching men to lie to women to get them in bed, to engage in manipulative head games to get them in bed, to do a bunch of corny pickup lines to get women in bed. We just believe in having the balls and backbone to let women know that we want to connect with them romantically and or sexually, and then we take it from there. And obviously not too many men have developed the balls and backbones to do that, because you got all these guys following all these indirect motherfuckers. But anyway, I'm going to hit the phone lines. I see area code 778. You are now up front and straightforward. Alan Roger Curry, and my guest for the 7th time, David X. What's your question and or comment?
Hey, Alan. Thanks a lot for having David on again. This is Sean.
Hey, Sean. I recognize that voice, man. Sean, I always told Sean he should be like a disc jockey for like a jazz radio station. Hey, you're back with Sean Benet and tonight's jazz. How you doing, buddy?
Living a dream. Thanks again. I remember talking to you over a year ago asking you to get David on, so it's awesome.
You sure did. I remember that, actually.
Yeah. And thanks a lot again, David, for coming out and coming on the record 7th time onto Alan's show. I was telling Alan over a year ago now that, whenever I've heard you guys on the radio or if I've seen you guys in seminar or something, it's phenomenal. It's like there's a synergy with it that I've never seen with anybody else. It's tremendous. It's a very powerful experience.
Thank you.
You know why that is? Can I tell you why that is?
I think you're going to. Go ahead.
It's simple, because Alan and I, it's the only time we can totally relax with another guru, let's say. Like I said, he thinks a lot like me. He's maybe, like he says, we don't hit eye to eye on every single item. He's a lot more polite than I am. But I don't care if I'm not polite. I want to tell it the way it is, and I see it my way. But you see, when I'm with Alan, like I remember we were sitting in London in the back room watching through a screen what was going on stage, and we started laughing at these guys who were on there. And I said that after we laughed, we literally almost peed ourselves laughing with what these guys were doing.
Yeah, I remember that.
Mm. Yeah. Now,
wait a minute. I think, hey, Sean, hold on. I think David inadvertently dropped, so I got to get him back.
Okay.
But, yeah, I remember what he was talking about, though, about, David, is this you?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
sorry,
there he is.
The internet just cut out. And I'll tell you something. When we were there, we were laughing at these guys so hard. And then Alan and I looked at each other, and we stopped laughing. We said, you see, that's the problem. They're talking to these kids who don't need this kind of stuff. They're not going to be successful. They're just going to spend their money. They're going to chase a dream which doesn't work. There's only one way to do it. And if you look around at the guys who get women, they're the guys who are just themselves. That's the key. That's the trick. It's not a trick. I'll tell you, it's hard when you're with somebody that understands it and gets it. You know, I got to tell you something. I teach a lot of kids, and I talk to them, and then all of a sudden, it hits them like that old commercial. I could have had a V8. It hits them. And you see how easy it is, and they go, yeah, this wasn't hard. And of course, they tell me like this, David, you were right. You're right. And I tell them, I know I'm right. I want you guys to be right. That's the key. These other guys, they don't know what they're doing, and they don't care if you get laid or not. No, it's more that they're going to tell you what to do, and and if you don't do it, come back for chapter 74. You know.
Matter of fact, and Sean, I know you called in not to just listen. You want to say something, so I'm gonna let you say something. But let me say something real quick. Yeah, and since we mentioned London a few times, obviously when we were in London, we were part of that Direct Dating Summit crew, and neither David or I are no longer a part of that crew. And David has his own reasons, but one of my big reasons related to what David was just talking about is that I can't be with a crew of guys who are teaching things that are not only different than me, but I mean almost like 180 degrees the opposite of what I'm teaching. I cannot in good conscience continue with that crew. And so a lot of people have asked me over the last couple of months, like, Alan, why aren't you part of, Sasha's Direct Dating Summit events and Direct Dating Summit Online Academy? And there's been a few reasons, as you know, I think you know, Sean, it ain't just necessarily one reason, but one of the biggest reasons is, their teachings, I'll put it this way. A lot of the guys in that crew that market themselves as direct guys are not direct. End of story. They're not direct. And I can vouch for David. David is probably one of the only guys I can really think of off the top of my head that's direct like me. Pretty much everybody else that I can almost think of who markets himself as direct, they're either one of two things. They're either totally indirect, but they're marketing themselves as direct, or at minimum, they're a blend. They're teaching principles that's kind of what I would call a blend or hybrid of direct and indirect. But they're not truly direct. Because I'll give you one example, as I think I did on a previous episode, when I was interviewing that guy Caleb, we talked about this. Here's the thing, guys. Anybody who teaches you to, before you have sex with a woman, to be either dishonest or at minimum vague and ambiguous about your intentions, but then as soon as you have sex with that woman once or twice, you're supposed to tell them that all you wanted was casual sex, that ain't direct. That ain't direct. Anybody who tells you to do that shit is not teaching you direct, because that ain't direct. When I know I want just short-term and or non-monogamous casual sex, I let women know that before I fuck them. I don't wait until after I fuck them once or twice. And Caleb admitted on my show, the guy who goes by the name Black Dragon, he admitted, he said, no, I wait until after I fuck them to let them know I just want casual sex. And that's what a lot of the guys in Sasha's crew and a lot of these other guys teach. They teach you to basically give women an impression that you're open to the idea of being their next long-term boyfriend or open to the idea of being that woman's future husband. And then after you fuck them, you say, oh, you know what? Actually, by the way, I just wanted casual sex. That ain't direct. Anyway, Sean, what's your question, comment, whatever?
Well, I agree, and I've mentioned to you before in the past when I spoke to you, like since coming across your material, being introduced to it, and as you know, I got all your books and your audio tapes, and I also bought David X's The Rules ebook that he has out.
Okay.
And since then, as I've mentioned, I've you know, the best way I can put it is it's like a thread of congruency or consistency has been shot through my entire life now, the way I am. Everything is just congruent now, genuine. And a lot of the fear went away. and a lot of the tension, when I'm interacting with women, it's just a lot of weight off my shoulders with that kind, being more direct and explicit and genuine. So in that way, that's the greatest kind of results that I've experienced from it, as I've mentioned to you before. And the results from the women, like their responses, the time, I haven't wasted a lot of time anymore. Like I've had a lot of long-winded discussions with women that I told you about too. Those have been cut down a lot. So those are the improvements that I've noticed. But the end results, the actual sexual relations with women, it actually hasn't improved.
Okay.
That's why I'm throwing in. David.
What did you say? The sexual relationship with women as what?
So I mentioned since getting into your guys' materials and following that, my interactions with women, it's felt tremendous, because of the genuineness, the honesty. And that being said, the actual end results of having sexual relations with women, sexual interactions, that hasn't actually increased.
Okay, I'm going to tell you something. The key to increasing and to doing the right thing and what you want to do, what you think is right, is to make the woman feel comfortable. A woman will sleep with you the first day you meet her if she feels comfortable with you. Now, what goes with feeling comfortable? Talking to the way you're talking to us right now, you have to feel comfortable in talking to us. A lot of guys will talk on the internet, but in real life they freeze.
Yeah.
You have to talk to a woman as if she was Alan or David. Say what you want. When you look at a woman, when you look at that woman, what's the first thing that goes through your mind? That's the most important. If you're saying, what is she going to think about me? Or maybe she doesn't like me because I'm short, I'm fat, I'm skinny, I'm tall. My dick isn't big enough. Maybe as soon as you start thinking about those things, you're not thinking about the right thing. Yeah. And the woman feels those doubts. You have to go up to a woman if she's got a gorgeous ass. I saw a woman with a gorgeous ass, and I tell my buddy, we were walking behind her, and I says, that woman has a gorgeous ass. And he goes, shh, she'll hear you. And I go, what? I walk closer to her, tap her on the shoulder, and I say, you know what? My friend was afraid that you'd hear me, but I wanted you to hear me because I don't want you to think I'm a weirdo. You have the nicest ass I've ever seen in my life, and I'd like to get to know you better. And I went out with her for 6 months. I had a fabulous time with her. When she left the house, she looked at her ass more than any guys look at her ass. She knew every centimeter of her ass. Every inch of her ass, she knew what it looked like. And I was the only guy that ever went up to her till at that time and told her she had a good-looking ass. She dressed to make sure her ass looked good. When I told her that, what do you think I want to get to know her for? Yeah, because I'd like to be putting my dick in her ass, What do you think I want to talk to her for? I want her to be my secretary. I want her to be my personal shopper. No, and I'm not going to say, really, I want you to be my personal shopper, I'll pay you. I don't want to mislead her. I want to know exactly what I want. And then I'm thinking about what she's going to look like naked. What position am I going to enjoy? My mind is racing so hard, all I can think about is fucking her. I'm not thinking about what she thinks. If she doesn't think that she wants to be with me, she can tell me quickly. When she goes out and makes everybody look at her ass, I think she'd like to have somebody play with it too. That's what I'm thinking about. You're hitting on them. You're being relaxed. You're being honest, but you're so afraid of them. What are you afraid of? They're gonna beat the shit out of you. They're gonna insult you. You know what? I have a policy. If a woman would say, "I heard about you. You're a pervert," I'd say, "You're right." What am I going to argue with her for? If she thinks I'm a pervert, I'm not going to change her mind. I'm not going to spend 4 hours denying it or trying to convince her of what she wants me to tell her. I don't give a shit what she thinks. I went into a club. I used to go in there all the time, and this one girl was always looking at me. And when I tried to pick her up, she says, "You've slept with a lot of the women and gone out with tons in this bar." I go, "That's right." She goes, "You just want me for another number?" I said, "I wasn't thinking about them, but then now when you mention numbers, I'm thinking only 69. That's what was in my mind. I wasn't thinking about. When I'm looking at a woman, that's what I'm thinking about. I don't care what they're thinking about. I tell this to a lot of guys. You got enough problem thinking for yourself. Don't think for anybody else. It doesn't work. That's where you're not taking him to bed. You tell him, you're the 16th woman I've hit on. We've got along, but I haven't taken anyone to bed. So if you have no intentions of going to bed with me, go home or introduce me to one of your friends.
Yeah.
That's the attitude you should have. Instead of thinking, I haven't been successful. No, you haven't been successful because you didn't tell them what you want. You beat around the bush. It's like I'm looking at a woman and I'm looking at her tits, and she says, "That's not my eyes." And I go, "Your eyes are beautiful, but your tits are better looking to me." What do I give a fuck what she thinks? And if you don't want me to look at your tits, leave. Get out of my sight. I'm not moving. You came out to make me look at your tits, and I'm looking at them. That's what it is. But all the guys think, "Oh, no, they don't want me to look at their tits or their ass." And I tell you something. I have one experience I have, and Alan saw that. I can smell when a woman gets wet. Yet they were sitting in front of 20, 30, 40 guys, more than that, I think. And I had me and Alan on stage, and we're only talking about fucking. You don't think these broads got wet? And yeah, I'm very, very acute to the smell. I could smell that musk. I could smell it, and I said, "You're both wet." It turned me on. Why shouldn't I tell them? And that turned them on.
Yeah, that was definitely a classic moment of that weekend. Here's what I would say. You finished? Okay, go ahead.
Let me just. I can think right now that if I told you to go over to a woman in a bar and tell her, I can smell you, you're wet. You think she'd slap you? They'll probably go to the bathroom to wipe themselves.
I don't have any hesitation with doing something like that. I've done it 610 times since reading Alan's first book.
Wow, 610 times? He got it down to the exact number.
Yep.
My thing is this, and I think you already know most of what I'm going to say, Sean, but number one, to all the listeners, listen, if anybody's read the ebook version or paperback version of Mode 1, or I want to say even the audiobook version, one thing I start off at the beginning saying is that if your number one focus or number one objective for being Mode 1 is to get laid, then I basically say don't follow my advice. Because I say, for me, getting laid is never the cake itself. That's the frosting on the cake. Because I find that with anything in life, you're going to have two types of people. You're going to have what I call people who believe the end justifies the means, or people who are just the opposite. And I'm one of those people who's just the opposite. For example, if your sole specific objective in life is to say have a lot of money, and you believe that the end justifies the means, that means you'll rob a bank for money. You'll knock over somebody's grandmother for money. You'll embezzle from your company for money because you believe that the end justifies the means. But if you're a person who puts more emphasis on the means to the end, then you're going to only want to make money by adhering to the laws of the land and dealing with people in an ethical manner. And when it comes down to it, if you got a choice between making money in an illegal and unethical manner or not making much money at all, you're going to choose not making much money at all. If you're a person who's about the means to the end. And I feel like the same way with pussy. Like I've had coaches on this very show. I want to say most recently that guy Caleb, who he basically said, he's all about getting the pussy. So many words, he's like, I don't care how I get it. I just want to get the pussy. See, I've never been that type of guy. For better or for worse, I've never been that type of guy. If I can't get pussy from a woman by being straightforwardly honest with her about the fact that I want to fuck her, then I don't want the pussy. If I got to date rape a woman to get the pussy, I don't want it. If I got to put some ecstasy pill in her drink or her food to get the pussy, I don't want it. If I got to give a woman a misleading impression that I want to be her long-term boyfriend or future husband to get the pussy, I don't want it. And see, some guys don't share that same attitude. They're like, oh, fuck that shit, I'll lie. Like I had a guy in Vegas tell me that. He said, shit, I'll lie to a woman in a minute to get the pussy. But what was interesting about this same guy, he said, I'll lie to a woman, I'll toy with her feelings, I'll emotionally manipulate her. But when I talked about fucking a woman that was under 18, all of a sudden he talked about ethics. Or when I talked about getting a woman drunk or putting ecstasy pills in a drink to get the pussy, all of a sudden he had ethics. So the basic conclusion was, I said, because he had initially tried to argue that he had no ethics related to getting laid. But when it was all said and done, he had ethics. He just didn't have the same as mine. But he did have some. But anyway, all that to say that, and if you listen to my old Say It Again audiobook, I say the same thing. I say, you never want to solely and specifically focus on getting laid. I'm not saying that shouldn't be part of the picture at all, because obviously that would be disingenuous. But I focus more on my means of getting the pussy than I do on simply the end result. And I always make the analogy, that's why you got so many people who yo-yo diet, who like lose weight, get fat, lose weight, get fat, lose weight, get fat. Because they concentrate just on losing weight. They don't concentrate on eating right and exercising. They concentrate on losing weight. So what does the average person do? What they'll do is they'll eat right and exercise up until the point where they lose some weight. And then they go right back to their same old eating habits, their same old lack of exercise. Then they get fat again. And they wonder, damn, how did they get fat again? Because you were emphasizing the end result, which was wanting to lose weight. You didn't emphasize the means to the end. And so that's what I tell guys. And that's why I say Mode 1 is not for everyone. And you've probably heard me say it, and most of my listeners, one phrase I use with a lot of guys, I'll say Mode 1 is not for everyone. And my main basis behind saying that, among other things, is what I was just talking about, is that some guys, they aren't about the means to the end. When it comes to pussy, they just all about the end result. Like, another coach who admitted that on my show was Kezia Noble from London. She's a female dating coach, and we got into a discussion, and she basically admitted, she said, I'm all about getting my clients laid. If they have to do that, like, unethically, by, she's basically like, ideally, I don't want them to have to lie to a woman or manipulate a woman or do whatever. But she was like, if they pay me good money, though, I'm going to give them whatever advice results in them getting laid. And I was like, at least you're honest about it. And that's how a lot of indirect guys feel. They like, hey, as long as I get my clients laid, I don't care what they say, I don't care what they do. But I'm not like that. So all that to say that if I have clients that feel like, hey, Alan, man, like Sean said, man, I'm not wasting time anymore. I'm not lying to women anymore. I'm not spending a lot of money. But, honestly, man, I'm not really getting laid. I don't know what to tell you other than maybe you're in the wrong fucking city. Like the guy, who was that guy I had to guess, I think 2 weeks ago. Seriously, what did the guy 2 weeks ago? John Berger, yeah. He basically said sometimes the reason guys ain't getting laid is not because they ain't got no game with women, but because they in the wrong Like one city I remember he picked on was San Francisco. He said, I would never recommend a guy move to the San Francisco area. He said, you're going to have a hard time fucking getting laid there. Because there's more men than women. Number one, and number two, he said the women are extremely intelligent and they won't date or have sex with a guy that they consider to be less intelligent than them. So he's like, I wouldn't encourage anybody to move to the San Francisco area. And sometimes it is. I've had situations where just a move, a geographical move from either one area of the city to another area of the city, or from one city to in a state to another city and state, or another city completely, has either improved the percentage of women I was able to seduce or worsened the percentage of women I was able to seduce. Sometimes it's just something simple as geography. But it's hard for me to believe, Sean, because I've seen you. I know how you look. You're not a unattractive dude. You got a smooth voice. It's hard for me to believe that it just ain't a woman nowhere in Canada that's not attracted to you romantically or sexually. I just have a hard time believing that.
What city are you in?
Vancouver.
Vancouver? Come on. Vancouver's like the California, like the L.A. of Canada. That's the closest you get to L.A.
Yeah. Well, I'm not blaming the city. I'm
not going to blame the city.
I'm not arguing with you about that. Definitely.
You know what? I should turn you on to a couple of my students and let them take you out around there.
Yeah, the only thing I can say from this point, and I'm sure David would feel the same way, like when it gets to this point with a client with me, that's when I want to do like a one-on-one with them, where I'm working with them face-to-face, because normally I'm able to catch something. Like I've had a number of clients that were similar to you, where they felt like they were BMO1 and they just weren't getting laid. Like I told about one story when I first started BMO1, I had a friend who wanted to emulate me. And he would say, Alan, man, I'm saying a lot of bold, straightforward things to women, but I'm just not getting laid. I said, really? I said, give me examples. And he would give me examples of things he said. I was like, yeah, that sounds like you were confident and straightforward. So finally I said, let me shadow you and see if I can pick up something that you, in your body language, that you might be doing wrong. Sure enough, his thing was whenever he would be bold, say something like bold, upfront, and straightforward, and particularly something sexually provocative, the minute women would frown or give him a negative reaction, his whole body language would become apologetic. He'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. And sure enough, that's what I told him. I said, dude, I see obviously where you're fucking up. As soon as women give you blowback, give you like what I call shit tests, or start busting your balls, you become a combination of defensive and apologetic. You got to quit doing that shit, man. You can't ever apologize for something you said that was straightforward or something you said that was sexually provocative. Sure enough, when he made that one adjustment, he stopped apologizing, stopped becoming defensive when women would criticize him or insult him or give him a negative reaction. Next thing I know, he's like, damn, Alan, man, I'm getting laid like crazy now, man. I'm getting like pussy on top of pussy just from that one piece of advice you gave me. So anyway, yeah, for me, that's the only further way I would be able to help you is to do some kind of one. And if you want to operate under David, I'm sure David would want to meet you in person and kind of observe your interactions with women, because it should be a situation where you've approached over 600 women and ain't connected with at least one.
Well, one out of 610 is the ratio right now.
Even 1 out of 600. You know what? I'm going to tell you something. When I started in this business, and my friend used to come up to me and says, there's a lot of guys who can't pick up women. I never believed him. I thought he was full of shit. Then when he used to bug me all the time, and he tells me, he brought me to one of these Lair meetings with like 15 guys talking about lines they would give women. I looked at this, I go, are these guys for real, or you put this group together to freak me out? And I gotta tell you something. When I left that group, I said to myself, holy Christ, there must be more women for me now. With these mental cases out there must be more women for me. And I took that attitude, and I was right. I picked up more women. It got easier. Because I knew there was guys, I took out a student one time to a bar. And we went into this bar, and there was 3 girls at this table, 2 girls at this table, 4 girls at that table, and the other side where all the guys were sitting at the other tables, they were all looking at each other. And I go, something's wrong here. It's like the Twilight Zone. Nobody's talking to anybody. So I got up, I took my student, I said, come with me. I took him over to a table, I said, this guy needs to meet some good-looking women to teach him how to pick up women. And we sat down, he started talking to them, and what a difference. There was the only table that anybody was mingling with. Because all these guys go out and they, I'll tell you, all guys go out and they tell you stories about stuff, and how could you hit on 600 women and even fuck one, man? I mean, Jesus Christ. I don't know what I would do. Maybe I'd become one of these guys who'd be banging my head against the wall. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I would do. The law of averages says it can't be done. And these are laws that exist. You can't hit on 600 women and fuck only one. It can't be.
Yeah, my best, again, I don't know, it could be a number of things, but my best guess, man, if you've approached that many women, 600 women, and not connected with one.
Oh, Alan, I figured it out. I figured it out. He had a sign on his chest that said, don't fuck me, I have AIDS.
Oh, that's cold, David. Come on, man. That's cold, man. No, I think it's something, I really think it's something. My best guess would be it's something to do with your body, something to do with your overall demeanor, and something to do with your body language. Because, I'll give you a perfect example. It's have you seen this YouTube video by this group that calls themselves Whatever? They just go by Whatever. And they had a couple of videos that became real popular called Asking Women Directly for Sex. And there's this guy, he just stands around either near the beach or somewhere close to the beach, and he just went up to a bunch of women and said, hey, would you like to have sex with me today? And, of course, all the women were like, no. He got a couple to laugh, but pretty much all of them said no. And guys, I had a lot of guys ask me my opinion on that. And my main thing was, I was like, yeah, on the positive end, I give them a handful of brownie points for just being direct enough to ask those women for sex. But on the negative end, number one, I never ask a woman for sex. I let them know I want to have sex with them. And a lot of people think those two are the same thing, but they're really two totally different things. I would never go up to a woman and say, hey, excuse me, can I have sex with you today? No. There's nothing smooth or seductive about that at all. Nothing. I let women know I want to fuck them, but I don't ask them for some pussy. And secondly, his whole body language was it had undertones of neediness and desperation. And anytime you approach a woman with undertones of neediness and desperation, you ain't going to get laid. Matter of fact, the guy I had last week, what was his name? Jeff Miller, who did a book with Tucker Max. I said on the show that there was a lot of things he had in his book that I disagree with, but there's a few things that I agree with. And one thing I agree with more than anything that he says in his book was, if you read my book, who said again, I use this phrase, pussy attracts pussy. And he basically said the same thing. He called it, he called it mate copying. That was, I think, his term for mate copying. Basically what he went on to say was, he said, if there's one thing that turns women on in a man is when they get a vibe from you or a sense from you that you've already successfully seduced a number of women. And that is so true. You gotta, without actually saying that, your whole vibe you gotta kind of ooze that vibe with women that, hey, I gotta let you know, I'm already fucking a number of women. And women can pick up on that. They know when a guy has been 2 months or 5 months or 6 months or 2 years since you had some pussy. Without you even saying that, they can tell that shit. So anyway, I got to move on. Sean, thanks for calling in. Now I'm going to go with area code 615. 615. You're now up front and straightforward with Alan Roger Curry, my guest, David X. Who's this? Hello? 615. 615.
He's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Hello?
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 Okay, 615.
Mode 1.
This must be JD.
Alan Roger Curry.
Up front, straightforward.
Alan Roger Curry.
So, JD, what's your question for David X or comment for this conversation?
I don't even know where to begin at. It's crazy. Like, I've been to Canada, and I've been to Quebecois, where David X is from, and it's when I first started finding out about who you were, Alan, and then I found out about David X later on through you. And the women there look amazing, and French women love fucking. Like, when I meet people, like I had a friend who's from France, he's like, yeah, I don't get that much sex. Attractive, good-looking. He just thinks about what the women are thinking. And I'm like, damn. Like, I never had that problem. My problem was I just overthink the situation. I end up talking myself out the pussy. But
yeah, a lot of men do that.
But yeah,
That's why you have to think about what you want and stay focused.
Appreciate the feedback. But I'm greatly happy to see you two together. It's like I talked to one of my friends today. It's like when you see a lion and you see another lion, and, they're from the same tribe, but they distance off a little bit, and they come back and they just wreak havoc on the world. And I'm really happy to see you two back together. From a lion all across the Canadian border in the snowy weather to a lion in the windy city. So it's awesome. The only question I have, because I've listened to a lot of David X, is I feel like I know what you're going to say, so I've already smacked myself, but I accept that. But my question is, when I stop being abstinent, how should I tell women that? Because I'm abstinent because I'm trying to get into higher education and I'm working on a lot of life goals, so I'm just not having sex right now. But when I get back to having sex, how should I just approach that situation?
You know what? You're trying to get into what you said?
I'm trying to get into an Ivy League institution. I'm trying to transition from the military to an Ivy League institution.
Well, yeah, first of all, you're in the military?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll tell you right now, women love soldiers. No question about it. You know what? I got to tell you something. What you told me you're thinking about, you should be talking about yourself. If I were you, I'd be very proud of myself. Just the fact of being in the military puts you a cut above the average guy. A high cut above, because you're ready to give your life for your country. You're not there working at a grocery store and never did anything. You have a lot to talk to women about. I'm sort of impressed with you, and you're telling me a little bit about yourself, but you're like too shy with yourself. You know more about yourself than anybody else on this planet. You got to like yourself. You got to be proud of who you are. A woman wants a guy who is proud of himself. She'll be proud of you also. You tell her you're not looking for any friends. You're looking for a woman to do for a man what a woman should do for a man. And you're not, and right now you might say, I'm not looking to go out to bars and clubs because I'm trying to get into a university or a college or whatever you want to get into. So I'd like to have a quiet, healthy relationship in private with a woman. That's what you should be focused on. Focus on what you want and focus on you're a special guy. Don't worry about if there's another guy down the street. Worry about yourself. Tell her about you. That's how you make them feel comfortable. You don't have to spend a lot of money on them, and you don't have to take them places. You have to make them feel comfortable. And if you talk about yourself and what you want, positive, you'll make them feel comfortable. There's your key.
Okay, and my another question I have is about there's a YouTube video I saw of you and Alan. That's the first time I got introduced to you. And I don't know how the hell you did it, but you were like using fruit to gauge a woman's like level of, I don't know, not arousal, but like her state of sexuality, like how sexual she is. I don't know how you got to that. I'm just trying to, how'd you get that skill? I'm trying to get that.
You know what I did? When I talk to women, I ask them every question possible because I want to know a lot about them. I want to know what they like to do, what kind of food they like to eat. I want to know how compatible we are. So if I ask a woman, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite fruit? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite vegetable? What's your favorite drink? And she tells me all these things I can put together in my mind because I've gone out with so many women, which that's why it's a lot easier for me to do. And I can tell her what type of woman she is. I can tell her when she's romantic. I looked at this one girl one time and I said to her, I bet you love putting candles around the bathtub and drinking champagne with orange juice. And she said, that's in all my fantasies. How did you know? Because every girl that reacted like her that I went out with was like that. I told one girl, I says, you know, I'd love to get strawberries and chocolate and eat them off your tits. And she said, that's my fantasy. How did you know? Well, I cheated because I've been with so many women, I can even tell the type. I can even look at a woman and tell what kind of pussy she has. But that comes from experience. That's not me trying to fuck 680 women. That's for me fucking 680 women. I don't want to know what clothes they're wearing. I want to see how they taste on my tongue. And yes, I can smell them. And why can I smell them and nobody else? It's not possible. It can only be me. It can't be possible. I'm in tune. I'm right away. I'm aware. I'm focused. Well, geez, you know. You smell something and you might think, oh, she farted. I don't know. I'm focused on what's going on. I'm aware. I look at a woman, I tell her, I know exactly how to make love to you. I know exactly how you're going to orgasm.
You know, it's funny, JD, since you listen to most of my shows, do you remember I think it was my second show? Yeah, the one with Caleb, the Black Dragon guy. And
no comment.
There was this,
unfortunately.
Yeah, and there was this woman that called in, and she started off criticizing me. But then before she hung up, I had her, giggling and whatnot. Anyway, me and her ended up having a private conversation either the next day or 2 days later. And she said a lot of interesting things, but one thing she said was along the lines of what David X was just talking about. And I've said this even in my own book, Upfront and Straightforward. I kind of brag that I have a keen sense of perception. And that's what this woman ended up saying. She has never met me, so it was very interesting to hear her say that. But she said, Alan, She said, I think you misleading your followers. I said, how am I misleading? She said, I don't think you tell them the whole story. I said, okay, I don't know what you're talking about. She said, you give your male followers the impression that you just go up to a woman and whisper in their ear that I want to fuck you, and then all of a sudden those women just drop their panties and open their legs for you. She said, that's not what you do. I said, well, I don't know if I've ever described what I do, that it goes right like that, step 1, step 2, step 3 like that. But anyway, go ahead. And she said, I can tell from just listening to you talk, you read people. She said, I think that's why you're so successful with women, is because you read their body language very well. You read, now here's the most interesting comment she made. She said, I can tell you read the verbal vibrations in a woman's voice. And without getting too lengthy, basically she said, just by sizing a woman up, both visually, verbally, and otherwise, you know which women that you can get their pussy wet and the women that you can't. You know it. It ain't just what you say or what they say back to you. And to a large extent, she was telling the truth. And like David was just saying, he pretty much gets in tune with a woman. That is what I do. From the moment I approach a woman, I don't just blindly approach her. I watch everything. I'm talking about I watch the way they move their fingers, the way they might play with their hair, the way they use their eyes, the way they walk. Like, one thing I've told a lot of guys, and the first guys didn't believe me until I start proving myself right, but you can tell by the way a woman walks sometimes that she's down to fuck or not. Because I find that women who are real prudish and not really down to fuck, those are the women who tend to walk real quick. They walk very quickly, they walk awkwardly, or they walk like they got something stuck in their ass. Whereas women who are more erotically uninhibited and free-spirited and basically down to fuck, they tend to have more of what I call a saunter. They walk it's very smooth, it's very fluid, and for the most part, it's a slow-paced. Those are the women who usually are the women who love to fuck, is the women who kind of saunter. And so I look at that. And, but yeah, Sean Bonet in the chat room said, I noticed a lot of the really hot ones walk fast. I don't know if I agree with, depending on what city, but yeah. I've got prudish women, I wouldn't say hot ones, but for me, prudish women always walk quick. Women who ain't really that kinky or uninhibited, they always walk fast. They walk quick. They walk awkwardly. So anyway,
okay.
I got some other callers. Go ahead. Go ahead with one more question or comment.
For David. So David, I just wanted to ask you about eye contact. I really don't notice how much or how big it plays into the situation. How big is eye contact really? I've been trying to understand that. How big is eye contact?
Well, it's very important because when a woman looks you in the eyes and you're not looking at her eyes, she doesn't trust you anymore. You have to
100% agree with that.
Their eyes. You have to look right into their eyes and tell them who you are and what you want. And you can't look away. Eye contact's very important because I think, to be honest, I don't know if Alan's going to agree with me, I think that's the woman's first test on a guy.
Oh, I agree. I 100% agree. Matter of fact, David, you should know I agree because guys always ask me, they say, hey, Alan, why is the cover of your Mode 1 book just your eyes? Or some guys didn't even know it was my eyes. They just say, you got a set of eyes on your book. What's that about? And I always say, even though most of my advice centers around verbal communication, I'd say the most important aspect of nonverbal communication is direct eye contact. And for all the reasons that David X just explained, I say the number one time a woman knows that you full of shit, or if not full of shit, she knows that you lack confidence, is if you can't look her in the eye for more than a microsecond. If you're talking to a woman and you start looking up at the ceiling or down at the floor, to the right side, to the left side, a woman knows you. She knows you're not an alpha male. She knows you're not an alpha male. Without you even saying shit. If you got shifty eyes, it's a proven fact. Matter of fact, when I've watched documentaries on how the CIA works and other people of that nature, like FBI types, one of the things they talk about is eye contact and how you can read certain things by people's eyes. And one of the most basic things is if you move your eyes too much when you talk to people, that makes you come across as a dishonest person and an untrustworthy person. That's when, like CIA types say, they know when people are lying to them and basically trying to feed them a bunch of bullshit is because their eyes, they can't maintain direct eye contact. And that's because you're trying to put on a facade. You're trying to put on a facade that you're one type of person when you're really not. But when a person's real, authentic, and confident, they have no problem. Like, a matter of fact, speaking of this, and David X, one of the first things that made me like David, well, I already liked him when he was a guest on my show, but that was over the phone. But I remember the first time I met him in the airport when I went to London. When he shook my hand, he looked me dead in my eyes. He wasn't looking up at the ceiling. He wasn't looking to the side. He looked me dead in my eyes for like a number of seconds in a row. And most of the men that weekend did not do that. David was almost the only person. Well, there was, I think, one other guy who did that. But David was the only person. He never shifted his eyes while he was talking to me. That's when I knew he was a real dude.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the feedback.
And to my defense, I have to defend myself here. If he would have had nice tits, I might have looked at them.
Oh my goodness! Right.
David is a good guy. Okay, thank you, JD, for calling in, man. Appreciate it.
Stay home,
and I'm gonna move along to. Somebody said they calling from Tulsa. It might be a block number. Okay, I'm getting ready to open up your mic, Tulsa. Is this you, Tulsa? Tulsa, I just opened up a block number. Is this you? Tulsa Reeves in my chat room. Okay, I can't hear. Okay, is this you, Tulsa?
Hey, how's it going? My name's Scott.
Okay, now I hear you. Okay, Scott. All right. Scott, how you doing? What's your question for David X, or what's your comment related to this conversation?
Alan, David, I love both you guys, and I love listening to the show. This is kind of awkward. My wife is listening, and she's a little upset, I'll be honest with you.
Okay, put her on the phone. Let's find out what she's upset about.
All right. Hey, Patricia, you going to come to the phone? Okay. Oh, yeah, there she is.
This is unbelievable. Okay, let's just cut to the chase. I don't like this guy.
You don't like
I don't
me?
think he's funny. No.
Why? Why don't you like me?
I don't think he's good looking.
It's
He's
only
too
look.
wrapped up in himself, and he just sits there like a cock.
You sound
Okay.
kind of inarticulate and unintelligent. What the fuck are you talking? You been drinking?
Oh, no. He's just
Okay.
sitting there like he's a fucking motherfucking cocker. Yeah.
Oh, all righty. Okay. I'm sorry, David, but I gotta. I'm about to. Yeah, I can't continue with that. That was a waste of my motherfucking time. 850. You are now up front and straightforward with Alan Roger Curry and my guest David X. What's your question or comment?
Al, what's going on, man? It's Kent.
What's up, Kent?
Dog, I don't know what the. What was that that just called in, man?
I think they try to do some kind of crank call or something. Cause,
again, guys like that and girls like that, it's not worth even thinking about.
Yeah.
It goes for what she's drunk. Obviously, she's drunk, and
Well, I'd hate for that to be her normal speaking voice, because damn.
And she's a mental case.
I love when you say that.
She's a mental case. I'll tell you, if I walked into a store and she's selling TV sets at Best Buy, and she was talking to me like that, I'd turn around and walk out.
Yeah, her voice was fucking horrible. I almost sound like a dude.
If she was my waitress, I wouldn't eat the food.
Oh man. So anyway, Ken, what's your question or comment?
Yeah. So, Dave, nice to meet. Well, not meet you, but nice to finally hear from you. Heard a lot about you. Definitely seen you on, the direct dating videos. But I guess there's a kind of two things. There's a comment towards, I guess, Sean Bonet, and I guess more of a kind of a question to you guys. Okay, so Sean was just talking about, he was talking to 600 women or whatever, and he, basically he didn't really get much success. And I'm only speaking anecdotally. I don't know Sean personally, but I know.
Can I just say something? Let me just tell you something. I listened to Sean, and I'll tell you something. If that guy would have got a box of business cards and says, "I haven't fucked a woman in 2 years, please call me," I guarantee he would have fucked more than what he's telling me he hit on 600 women. What did he? Oh, I mean, like I said, the law of averages tell me he's lying. There's the problem with most guys, okay? Who's he trying to impress? Me and Alan? He's not going to impress us, and he's not going to gain anything. He's like living a lie, a story. If he's fooling us, he's not really. He's only fooling himself. He can't talk to women, ask for help. Don't say, it's like I tell you, I did something that I don't think Alan's done, and so I went to a couple of lair meetings. These guys.
I've been to a couple. Yeah, I've done that a couple times.
And these guys in the lair were all like this guy. I remember one of the guys said, "I just got a great new line." And I'm sitting there and I'm listening. "Yeah, what's your new line?" He goes up to a woman, he pats both pockets in his shirt pocket, and he goes, "I've lost my number. Can I get yours?"
Oh, man.
This is the lamest guy I've ever met in my life. If I was a woman and somebody said that to me, I'd tell him, "Get lost."
Usually, Kent, as I said to Sean, I've known Sean for a little while. I don't think he per se he's lying, but like I said to him though, when I work with guys similar to him, what happens is usually the fewer guys that I had like a one-on-one dating coaching session with, every time if it wasn't something to do with their verbal communication, it was something to do with their body language, and I would catch it. Like I want to say, like about 2 years ago, I did a one-on-one dating coaching session with a guy, and I took him out in Chicago to approach women, and his whole body language, he had a non-confident demeanor. And women, even though, again, most of my emphasis is on verbal communication, I don't necessarily put all that much emphasis on nonverbal, but I do to a degree, particularly in Say It Again. But women can pick up on things. Like, without you saying certain things, they can pick up on if you lack confidence or if you are an egotistically insecure person, or if you, just by the way you say things, you might, like I was working with a consultation client one time, and I was emphasizing this to him because I said, what you say versus what you don't say is very important. But what's also equally, if not more important, is how you say stuff. And I gave him different variations of telling a woman, I want to fuck you. Like I said, okay, let's say you went up to a woman and you said, hey, my name is Frank, and I want to fuck you. And he just started laughing. I said, do you think any woman's pussy would get wet if you approached her and said that? I said, okay, here's another variation. You approach a woman, you say, hey, how you doing? My name is Frank, and I just got to tell you, I'm hoping you don't mind me saying this, but I want to fuck you. What woman's going to be turned on by that? Then I said, but let's say you approach a woman and you look her dead in her eyes, and you have an extremely confident demeanor, and you're like, hey, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Frank. What's your name? Linda. Then I got to tell you, you're sexy than a motherfucker, and I want to fuck the shit out of you. Ain't too many women, unless you just look like a psycho killer or something, ain't too many women going to respond negatively to that third variation.
I don't think so.
Because it was smooth, it was low volume, and like that alone, and Kent, you probably heard me say this now probably like 50 times, so I'm repeating this to you and some of my other listeners, but I always bring up this woman who was on my show named An Vu. She's a beautiful Asian woman from Atlanta. And when I was interviewing her, she started out saying that I don't like men to talk dirty to me, I don't like men to talk to me in a sexually provocative manner. And no sooner than she said that, I started talking to her in an X-rated manner. I said, oh, you telling me you wouldn't let me just suck on your clit and kiss on your pussy? And sure enough, she started going, oh. And then she ended up saying, she said, Alan, your type of dirty talk turns me on. I said, why? What makes mine different? She said, well, for starters, most guys, when they try to talk dirty to me, they talk real loud. And so that's one simple piece of advice I tell guys all the time. You can't be talking to a woman, call yourself talking dirty woman, and you talking all fucking loud and blowing their eardrums out. Ain't nothing sexy about that. But if you look at a woman directly in her eye and she lets you get close enough to whisper into her left ear, you're like, God, I want to play with your pussy and just get it real juicy wet. Just squeeze on your nipples. And matter of fact, David has this product. I don't know if you still have this product. David's similar to me because everybody knows I love phone sex. And David had this thing called Orgasm Girl, I think it was called, David. Was that right?
Yeah.
And he's like talking dirty to these chicks. And I mean, I give David his props, man. He's smooth. When he's in talk dirty mode, he's a smooth motherfucker. Like, again, when we was in London, he was real smooth. Like, he just looked at those women, and it was just real calm. He wasn't real loud. He was real calm. Like, he just said, I know you two's pussies are wet. I can smell them. Everybody was just tripping, man. I mean, guys were coming to me like, man, that was like unbelievable. And like David X just told him, like, God, he said, I can smell your pussies. And they like just start smiling and smirking, and they cross their legs. But yeah, anyway, you got to be smooth, man. So going back to Sean, I'm not saying he's just flat out not a smooth guy. I would have to see. For me, if I'm his dating coach of choice, I would have to work with him in person. And I'm almost 99% certain I would catch something physically he's doing wrong, like the way he's moving his hands, the way his head is moving, the way he's using his eyes. I would almost guarantee there would be something I would be able to catch and say, okay, this one thing you do with your hand or your head or whatever, don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I was just gonna say because when I approached, that was the thing I noticed is that when I got the best responses usually whenever I was, number one, when I was genuinely in a good mood. That was always the first thing I noticed was that when I was already in a good mood, I found, again, it wasn't 100%, but I found that the interaction usually went better. But then I also noticed that when I was in that mode of, I don't know, it's hard to say, but I guess it's like, when certain athletes, they get into a zone Like, you know, like they'll say, like, you know, Michael Jordan, like, you know, the flu game, he was in the zone, and, you know, he dropped, you know, however many points or whatever, you know. Like, I noticed that whenever I get into that zone, everything kind of goes better. But what I was also going to say, though, because I know this has been a problem for me, and I don't know if it may be a problem. Well, I was going to say it could possibly be a problem with him, but again, I don't know. But there may be a certain fear of failure somewhere, because I think that tends to hurt a lot of guys too, and I know for me personally, it's something that you don't consciously realize it until you actually. It's one of those things where it's like you have to, like when someone tells you a concept in a movie, you might have to rewatch the movie because you may have missed it, but then when you rewatch it, you're like, oh shit, I missed that. Is it making sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's like this. I'm gonna say two things, and then I'm gonna turn it back over to David for his feedback. But my two things is one: imagine you were approaching me in some business building with the objective of asking me for a $10,000 loan. Think about how you would look at me and how you would talk to me and just generally how you would feel if you were approaching me with the objective of asking me for a $10,000 loan. Now, similarly, think of yourself as approaching me in that same building with an envelope with $10,000 in it, and it's going to help you get a tax write-off or something. So that's why you're feeling so charitable. And think about approaching me with the objective of offering me $10,000. Any differences you noticing?
Oh, yeah, with the second one, it's like, okay, it is what it is. You know, I'm doing him a favor.
Mm-hmm. Which would cause you to what?
Be more confident.
Yep. I said that's number one, and there's at least one other thing.
I guess. Well, for me personally, if I were to get, let's say I wanted to give you money, and you were like, well, nah, you know, I'm not. Let's say, and you said you didn't want. I was like, okay, whatever, you're lost, and I move on.
There you go. Yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to highlight. Is that when you're talking to someone and you know you have something of value to offer them, it automatically eliminates any sense of neediness or desperation. Whereas when you go on to somebody with the underlying attitude that you're looking for them to provide you with something with value, even sometimes without consciously realizing it, your whole demeanor is going to have a certain undertones of like neediness and desperation. And that's one of the biggest things I find when a lot of guys, when I watch them approach women, is they approach women almost like they're on the verge of begging them for something, the way like a homeless person when they come to you looking for money. I mean, seriously. And I don't ever approach, when I approach women, I basically approach them with an attitude like, my dick is going to give you way more pleasure than your pussy is going to give my dick pleasure. Like, basically, like, I'm doing you a favor by offering to fuck you. I don't ever approach a woman like, oh, my God, I ain't no pussy in like 3 or 4 weeks. Can you please give me some pussy? I mean, I'm such a loser. They just really need some. Now, I approach women with attitude. I can't tell how many women have told me that. They say, Alan, when you first met me, you were so cocky. You approached me like you were like the best lover on earth or something. And I was like, well, you know, that's just who I am. And I mean, I really do. I'd say 95% of the time I approach women, that's my demeanor. My demeanor is like, when I fuck you, I guarantee you're going to come. Without actually saying that. Like, I rarely am, in terms of my words, am I real cocky like that. But my demeanor, my disposition is always like, if you and I have sex, at minimum, you're going to have just as much fun as me. And more than likely, you're going to have more fun than I might. And I never give off any hints of no fucking neediness or desperation. when I talk to women. So, yeah, that was the second thing I was going to say, but I can't remember. So, David, any feedback you want to give Kent?
Well, definitely what you're talking about is confidence. Now, how much confidence you have, like I said, doesn't really matter. Like, yeah, Alan and I are much more experienced, but you know what? Like I said, you're in the military. Start talking about yourself. Be confident in what you know and what you can do.
Oh, no, that was JD. Kent, are you in the military?
Nah, man.
Oh, no, okay, David, yeah, you confused me. That was the last caller. JD was the one that was in the military, but Kent, you're a college student, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So what's basically your problem? Are you having problem connecting with them? Closing? What are you having problems with?
I would say my problem is, like, I'll give you a good example, right? So I'm used to, I guess this is basically just maybe from upbringing, but whenever I do things, I'm used to picking up on them relatively soon, right? And what will end up happening is, since I pick up on it so quick, I get bored with it. I'm like, okay, well, I got it, whatever. So to bring the analogy home, let's say, so like for example, when I approach, let's say I consistently approach, every for weeks and weeks and weeks, I start getting success, and I'm like, man, this should be, whatever. And then I break off, and then later on I'll start back up again. But I keep thinking, like, man, if you keep, like, it's like going to the gym. It's like, man, you can, you're lifting weight. You're lifting a good amount of weight now. But if you stay in the gym consistently, you can really move some weight. So that's my problem is consistency.
Well, again, I give myself a rule. And usually I can figure it out pretty good. I give a woman 3 chances, and I don't give her a 4th chance. I just had a student tell me, well, he's going to give them 5 chances, because I tell them, choose the number you want to give. I don't let it go to 5. And if you're getting bored with them, it's not for you. Get out of it. Don't try to flog a dead horse. If you're bored with this woman, it's over. Go for somebody that excites you. And you tell her, you're exciting me. I was with another woman, she didn't excite me. I want to be with a woman who excites me. They want to be wanted. A woman wants to feel that she's wanted. Go out to the library and pick up a romance novel. Doesn't matter which one you pick up. They'll all be the same story. Women want to be wanted. They want to be needed. Women are the nurturers. Women want to take care of their man. Let them. Don't be afraid to let them. And if they're not, Alan said, there's different types of women. But don't forget one thing about women is there's still a statistic out there that you have to remember. 60% of all women never have an orgasm in their lifetime. Now, that could be for a number of reasons. That could be for a number of reasons. Could be because they haven't met the right guy, which that's what guys think. But it's not. Women have problems with orgasms and with sex. You'd be surprised how many women do. When I was out with a bunch of guys one time, I asked the waitress, have you ever heard that? You believe it's true? She goes, yes, I believe it's true. And she looks at me and she goes, are you going to ask me which group I'm in? I go, no, I can tell you're in the 40% group because you want to tell me. She started laughing and smiling. That's the reality of it. And remember that 60% of women can manipulate guys. And if you're attracting, look, this other guy, let's say he's not telling us stories. Let's say he's not lying. Then he's attracting 60% of the women he shouldn't be attracting. And what it means is, you see 4 women, you're going to be able to fuck at least 2 or 3 of them. For sure. Not 4. You won't be able to fuck 4 of them. Go after the one you can fuck, not the one you can't fuck. Go after the one you want to be with. Go after it, but don't try to convert a plow horse to be a racehorse.
I like that.
Okay, thanks a lot, Kim, for calling in, man.
No problem, man.
Always good to hear from you.
Man.
Oh, Mode 1, there you go.
Alan Roger Curry.
Up front, straightforward.
Alan Roger Curry.
Okay, I got to give my usual warning. If you call, you got to call into my show in order to listen to the show from starting with 5 minutes from now, because the show is going to cut off. The longest the show ever goes in the chat room is 3 hours, and we're about to hit the 3-hour mark in about 4 to 5 minutes. So if you want to listen, we're not going to go that much longer than the top of the hour. Probably go maybe 15, 20 minutes past it, because I see 337 in my phone queue. I see 480. I see 773. If anybody else wants to talk, they need to press the number 1 now. Press the number 1, and then I know you got a question. So I might go as late as like maybe 3.5 hours, but we're about to hit the 3-hour mark again in about 4 minutes. And so you have to call in order to listen, just to listen to the show. Even if you don't have a question or comment, you're going to need to call in 646-478-5710. Otherwise, you will not be able to listen to the rest of the show in the chat room. And right now, I'm going to take a second and final intermission break so that David can get a swig of water. And I'll be back in about roughly 4 minutes. So while I'm playing this commercial, or intermission, I should say, then you call into the show, 646-478-5710.
Mode 1.
Oh, say it again.
Ooh, say it again.
Attention, single men. Are you tired of women who you find attractive, placing you in the dreaded friend zone for an indefinite period of time? Are you dreadfully afraid of using sexually provocative language and X-rated words with women in your very first conversation with them? If you answered yes to one or more of the aforementioned questions, then I would strongly suggest that you visit audible.co.uk or audible.com right now and download author Alan Roger Curry's latest audiobook entitled Ooh, say it again. Mastering the Fine Art of Verbal Seduction and Oral Sex. In this audiobook, Alan will first teach you how to overcome and eliminate outdated, ineffective beliefs and attitudes that are holding you back and preventing you from presenting yourself to women as a man who is confident, highly self-assured, and verbally smooth and seductive. Not only does Alan provide you with very specific instructions on how to improve the effectiveness of your voice and your overall conversation skills in part 1 of the audiobook, but once you progress to part 2 of the audiobook, you are most certainly in for a treat. Alan, aka the King of Verbal Seduction, features 6 verbal seduction stories that are based on his real-life interactions and provocative conversations with women from his past. Oh my God. The first 3 verbal seduction stories left me so aroused that my pussy is literally dripping wet. Oh. Here is a hot, arousing excerpt from part 2 of The King's audiobook.
You and I should be going to church tomorrow instead of standing here talking about fucking.
Instead of standing here talking about what?
You fucking me.
Who wants to fuck you?
You want to fuck me, Alan.
Oh, say it again.
You want to fuck me, Alan.
Oh, where do you want my dick?
In my pussy.
Oh, say, oh.
Oh.
Oh, say it again.
Oh.
Tell me how wet I got that pussy.
It's so wet.
Oh, say it again.
You say my pussy's so wet.
The king is such a dynamic instructor and professional dating coach that you will feel like he is in the room with you, giving you a one-on-one training session with the king himself. Don't you want to gain the power to get a woman's pussy wet with just the smooth seductiveness of your voice? I mean, don't you? And ladies, do not be misled into believing that the King's audiobook is strictly for male listeners. Not at all. As a woman, you will enjoy the entertaining insight that Alan provides in part 1 of the audiobook. And I can almost guarantee you that your cute, beautifully trimmed and shaven pussies will soon become extremely wet after listening to the King's smooth, seductive voice. Oh, speaking of wet pussies, if you'll excuse me, I'm about to play with my pussy as I continue listening to the King's erotically dominant voice. Oh. Visit www.mode1.net as well as audible.co.uk or audible.com right now.
We now return to my interview with attraction expert and seduction guru David X on Upfront and Straightforward with Alan Roger Curry, right here on the Blog Talk Radio Internet Radio Network.
Welcome back to another episode of Upfront and Straightforward. I want to thank everybody in my chat room who joined me. As of right now, you can't listen from the chat room, but I want to thank Diva362636, Mode 1 Confidence, Jazz Kaz, Sean Benet, Stan, my man, and a number of guests, and I think that's it. Oh, and Jazz Kaz. I'm going to go right back to my phone lines. If you tuned in late, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting. If you tuned in late, I am interviewing the one and only David X. He is an internationally known attraction expert, seduction guru, and overall dating coach. He hails out of Montreal, Canada. And his claim to fame in relation to this show, he's been a guest on this show more times than any other individual guest of mine. This is his 7th time on my show and first time in 3 years. The last time he was on my show was the first Thursday in October of 2012. And a lot of people consider he and I as really the only true, what's known as direct dating coaches out there. Because most of the guys out there, they're either totally indirect or they're kind of a blend or hybrid of direct and indirect. But as far as guys who are just fully direct, I would say other than David X and myself, I can't think anybody off the top of my head that's like fully a dating coach who fully emphasizes just being direct. Everybody else, again, is either indirect or they kind of both direct and indirect. Area code 337. You are now Upfront and Straightforward with Alan Roger Curry and my special guest, David X. What's your question and or comment?
Will you marry me and ruin my life?
Oh, we got to always have somebody call in for a crank call. It never fails. It never fails. Area code 480.
That's another
you a crank call too, 480?
Do you know who I
Golly, where did these guys come from? You just got to laugh that people have that much free time to just have a crank call. That's funny. Yeah. 773. Hopefully I don't get 3 crank calls in a row. I think I know who this is. 773?
Mode 1.
I knew it wasn't this one. Wasn't no damn crank call.
Alan Roger Curry.
Up front, straightforward.
Alan Roger Curry.
Hey, Alan, it's Alex.
Alex, I knew it was Alex. How you doing, Alex? Alex, what's your question for David X or your comment for this conversation?
Okay, so it's been really great listening to you guys chop it up. David, I'm a huge fan. I'm actually a native Montrealer.
Oh, really?
Native Montrealer, but I live on the West Coast in California.
Oh, I can't blame you.
Yeah, but you can't blame me. But it's funny you guys mentioned this earlier. Alan, you mentioned about your guest a few weeks ago about San Francisco not being the best place for this type of stuff. So we had that discussion, and when I called in last time, I was expressing my frustrations a little bit with the demographics here.
Yeah, I remember.
I suppose yeah. So I'm actually planning to go back to Montreal. It's definitely, or going back to Montreal for the holidays. It's definitely a better scene out there, I'd say.
Well, I got to tell you something. When I did a lot of seminars in California, and I had a good friend living out there. And one day we were at the beach. We were at Malibu. We were going to have lunch in one of these restaurants there. It's got like sailboats in the docks right beside it. I forget the name of it, but it's pretty easy to find. And I was telling my buddy, I says, you know what I noticed about all the women here? He goes, what? I go, they look like sisters. They all have their tits done. They all have their noses done. And, I got to tell you something. They all look like their sisters, which for somebody coming from anywhere else and going to L.A., it's exciting for a while. But, I'll tell you something. And I there's a lot of – Montreal's a funny city, Alan. I don't know if you realize this. There's really 2 groups here. There's French Canadians and there's English. And the English people, most of them don't like the French Canadians, and they don't mingle. They stay in the English end of town. And I was always one to mingle. And I found that the French Canadians treated me so nicely. And the French Canadian women went crazy for me because most English guys don't interact with them. And I found, like I said in a lot of my seminars, French girls put their legs behind their ears to attract men. And that's the reality. Here, the women are more independent. In where I am, the women are the most independent in the continent. Women don't take their husband's name when they get married. They keep their own name. It's a law. They cannot take the husband's name. Like
it's funny, David. I was going to ask you, David, really along these lines. So I left Montreal when I was 20. I moved to Chicago, which is actually close to Alan, so I feel like a special vibe going here, Montreal-Chicago connection. But I wanted to ask you, Alan, as an Anglophone, and this is very specific, so I apologize to the rest of the chat room. But I found when I left, it was really difficult as an Anglophone to try to get the French girls, and typically in Montreal, as you know, the French girls are the hottest ones.
That's what I've heard.
So I wanted to ask your opinion about that, about the language barrier and sort of not being able to speak. Well, I mean, I speak French, but it's not. I'm not a native I'd say Quebecer, you could say.
Okay.
It's like I said. I used to tell people, I know how to fuck in French. I don't care about talking to them. Okay. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. You know, you see, I've heard what you're going to tell me. I've heard from English guys all my life, and I used to tell them, come with me to the East End. Go to any bar there, sit down, and try to talk French to them. They'll want to talk English to you. And it's incredible how friendly these women are. They like the idea. You know, you look like you're hopeless. You look like you can't even order a cup of coffee or a bowl of soup if they don't help you out. They love that. There's where you're wrong. You see, you're using some fear. You go there and and you're afraid to talk to them because of all the other reasons, plus you don't speak French well enough, or they're going to know you're English. You know, they used to call me a bloke because in England, you talk about blokes. They would call all the Englishmen blokes, and I didn't give a shit. Like I told you, I don't care what they call me. She can call me anything she wants as long as her legs are behind her ears, and I'm pumping my head off. You know, that's it. But I don't have that fear that most guys have, and I don't know why I don't have that fear. It could be, and I'll just speculate, it could be because when I look at a woman, all I'm thinking about is fucking her. So all the other stuff doesn't come into play in my mind. I want to talk to her. I want to make her feel comfortable. I want to tell her, yeah, you're going to have a good time with me. You can feel safe with me. You can feel secure with me. And you're going to feel fantastic with me. I'm going to try to make you feel fantastic. I'm not there to hurt you. And, you know, if like, we were joking, and I told one of the first times I spoke to Alan on this radio, I talked about and we laugh about my student, who I called a mental case. And yeah, this woman used him for a year and a half. And you know what? I found out there's hundreds of thousands of guys like that. They get used because they're afraid they're gonna lose the woman. I better have this, which is lousy, than try to get nothing.
I don't necessarily have that problem. I don't, you know, if I feel like I'm not gonna get it, I'm usually out of there. I know I don't usually get put in the friend zone because I don't allow it. The thing is, though, I tend to cut my losses pretty quick. And
it doesn't matter. You know what?
It
doesn't matter. You cut your losses quick. You should. You know, if you're not getting the reaction that you want, get out of there. That's all. You know
okay,
what?
so I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask about, you know, when I'm in there, and it's sort of related to what you were talking to that the military dude. You mentioned, you know, you're someone that you should be proud of, and you should talk about yourself and all that stuff. I find I'm a bit uncomfortable doing that. I feel like I do have a lot to offer, and I have a lot.
Listen. You hit the nail on the head. I'm going to get to this quick. You said you're uncomfortable talking about yourself. Okay.
Let me explain why. So it's because I have a lot going for myself, and I don't want to come off as arrogant. You know, I don't want to cross the arrogant, cocky line.
Let me ask you
because then it's like, oh, this guy's full of himself, and you know, fuck.
You see, again, you see, you're doing exactly what I tell guys not to. You're thinking what they're thinking about. You see, you're against rule number one. You're exactly thinking about what the women are thinking about, and you haven't even met them yet.
Yeah, Alex, I don't know if you knew about David X before this interview, but what you just said is a total violation of his rule number one, and to a large extent mine too, because I tell guys the same thing. But yeah, David X's number one rule is never, ever, ever concern yourself with what a woman is thinking about you or how she's going to perceive you or what she's going to say about you behind your back. That ain't none of your business. That's on her.
That's right. You see, right away you revert back to worrying about what she's thinking. You don't want to come off as arrogant because maybe she won't like arrogant. You don't want to come off too proud of yourself. Look, you lived in Montreal, you lived in Chicago, you're in LA now. You got to have an exciting life. You got to be proud of yourself. Why not? I would be proud of you. But you're now afraid to be proud of yourself. It might offend another woman. Who the fuck cares? You haven't even met this woman yet you're going to offend. You don't know if she's a bitch or she's nice. And you're worried about offending her? She should worry about offending you or keeping you.
Yeah,
you shouldn't worry about her.
Along those lines, so I find I get into this issue often is that, you know, I'll meet her and she'll wait on having sex with me because she wants to keep me as a boyfriend.
You see, again, you know what you're doing now? You're telling me what she wants. You haven't mentioned once what you want. You're mentioning about what she's thinking and what she wants. Right there. You know, what can I say to you? You're doing exactly what I say not to do. Who cares what she wants? It's what you want that's important. Number two says you're the most important person in the relationship. And that's not just words written down as number two.
Quick funny story, David and Alex. The second time I interviewed David, I was actually in a serious relationship with a woman that whenever you Google my name, a picture of me and her show up. So that gives you a hint of who I'm referring to. But anyway, she heard me talking to David X. This was in December 2009. And she asked me that very thing because David X was talking about just what he was just talking about, his rule number two. And she said, so, honey, I got to ask you a question. I said, what's that? She said, I heard you talking to your guest, David X, and you agreed with his rule number two. So are you telling me that when you first connected with me that you really didn't give a damn about what I wanted? And I think she genuinely thought I was going to say, oh, no, honey, I was just saying that because I was talking to David X. I said, I never give a fuck about what a woman wants when I first approach her. And she was like, oh, my God, are you serious? I said, never, ever. I said, I never, ever. When I approach a woman, the only thing that's on my mind is letting them know what my romantic and or sexual desires, interests, and intentions are, which is why the subtitle of my first book is called Let the Woman Know What You're Really Thinking. That's my number one objective, is to let them know what's on my mind. And number two, once I qualify them and make sure that they're not married or engaged, because I don't do that shit no more as far as fuck around with other men's wives and fiancés and girlfriends. I qualify to make sure they're single, and then that leads me to my second objective. I want to get their pussy wet. That's my two things. Let a woman know what I'm thinking, and find a way to get that woman's pussy wet. Because bottom line, you could be the most intelligent person in the world. You could have a lot of knowledge and wisdom and expertise in different areas. In a nutshell, you could have everything going for you. But if you can't get a woman's pussy wet on a regular or semi-regular basis, how the fuck you gonna fuck her? And the same thing goes in both directions. A woman could be beautiful, have a nice body, she could be intelligent, educated, but if she can't get your dick hard, how y'all gonna fuck? She got to be able to get your dick hard, and you got to be able to get her pussy wet. So that's over half of what I concentrate on, is letting women know what I'm saying. But anyway, going along the lines of David's rules, which I wholeheartedly agree with both of those rules, yeah, I never concern myself with what a woman, how a woman, and that's the biggest problem. And me and David talked about this extensively when we were in Amsterdam together, because Matter of fact, David, I hope you don't mind me telling this story, but I've actually told this story to a couple of people I think on my show. But we were in Amsterdam in 2010, and David had this client who I met him. He was a nice guy, good guy. You know, I don't really necessarily want to disparage the guy. But David had told me, he said, Alan, I got a client I'm going to pass on to you. I said, you going to pass him on to me? He said, yeah. And he said, I got to let you know, I never ever do that. I never pass a client on to somebody else, but I'm going to pass him on to you. I said, why so? He said, because he won't listen. He said, I can't continue to work with somebody who just doesn't listen. And he violates my first rule, like, all the time. So anyway, Alex, I'm talking to the guy. We ended up meeting with him, and David X introduced him to him. And he's like, hey, man, Alan, man, I read your book, man, Mode 1. It was a good book, man. I love the book, man. Man, I love you and David X to death, man. I swear, I love you too. I was like, okay, thank you. I said, so, tell me your problem. What's your issue? He said, well, I want to be real direct with women, but when I always find a way to mess it up. I said, well, why do you think that is? He said, I don't know. I just always visualize them, like, cursing me out at the top of their lungs or slapping me. I said, well, why do you have those visualizations? How many times has that actually happened to you? He said, none. I said, okay. So you got visualizations of all these negative reactions, but they've never, ever happened to you. He said, no. So we go in this grocery store that was in this, like, Union Station type facility. And I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Next woman that comes in that you're attracted to, I want you to just do these three things. Can you follow just three simple directions? He said, sure. I said, I want you to approach the woman and introduce yourself. Number 2, let her know that you think she's attractive, sexy, or both. And then the third thing I want you to do is just simply say, I would love for you to share my company one-on-one in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I said, is any of those three things hard, like that you feel like you can't do? He said, no, I can do all three. I said, okay. Then I reiterated the three things again. Woman, this beautiful blonde comes in the grocery store. He says, he approaches her. I can't remember the guy's name. Let's call him David. He approaches her. He said, hey, I'm David. What's your name? And she says her name. I don't know her name. Let's say her name is Barbara. She said, oh, I'm Barbara. He said, I got to tell you, Barbara, not only are you very, very attractive, but you are just so fucking sexy. And I didn't even tell him to say fucking sexy. But he said, you're so fucking sexy. And she starts blushing like crazy. She's like, oh, my God, man, I can't believe it. And so with the first 2 of the 3 instructions I gave him, he got an A+. He didn't hesitate to approach her and introduce himself. He didn't hesitate to let her know that she thought she was attractive, sexy. Now, Alex, what was the third thing I told him to do?
Tell her that he wants to share a company.
Yeah, invite her to share his company one-on-one sometime next 2 or 3 weeks. Would you say that was a challenging request?
After the first 2, no.
You pretty much consider that a simple, straightforward request.
Sure.
And this is where I understood why David X was willing to pass his client on to me. When he got to request number 3 of mine, she starts, as she's talking to him, she's looking at this orange juice. And he says, hey, you like that brand of orange juice? She says, yeah, I sure do. He says, oh, the orange juice I really like is this brand. He talks about some other brand. He starts talking to her for about 5 minutes about fucking orange juice. Then he starts talking about his favorite meats. And I'm fucking going nuts watching this. I'm like, what the fuck is he doing? Sure enough, she disengaged. She gave that kind of phony, polite, like, oh, you know what, I'm sorry, I got to continue shopping, but it was nice meeting you. Okay, take care. And then he looked incredulous, like what just happened? I said, why the fuck did you start talking about orange juice? He said, said, well, I was worried that if I just immediately invite her to share my company, she would think I'm too forward. He violated David's rule number 1, and he violated the advice I had just. Matter of fact, have you seen you probably haven't seen the tapes of when me and David were in London.
I think I've seen a few clips. I've seen a few clips, yeah.
Now, this is why David cracked a joke earlier when he said one of the differences between me and Alan is that Alan's probably a little more polite than I am. Man, it was so funny to me because every guy who asked David a question that violated that rule number 1, David would come off the stage and get in their face like, you bitch. Why are you asking me a question that's related to what a woman is thinking when I just told you not to fucking concern yourself with what a woman's thinking? Why are you asking me a question? Because these guys are being honest. Hey, David, hey, I love your advice and everything, but, what if I'm in a grocery store and a woman thinks, I'm some kind of creep? Anyway, all that to say that is one of the top 2, top 3 obstacles I feel like that holds most of my students back and most of David X's students back. They're always worried about what somebody else is fucking thinking. And I know for some people it is kind of, you could say, arguably easier said than done to overcome that. And it might not happen in 24 or 48 hours, but you have to make a concerted effort not to give a fuck what other people think of you. You just have to. You'll never be a master seducer of women worried about what other people think.
Fair enough.
You know, I
was okay, fair enough there, guy.
You know, I'll tell you something, okay? I had a student also, and he goes up to a club and he wanted to talk to this woman. He says, she was standing too close to other guys. I didn't want those other guys to hear what I was saying to her. So I go, I don't care if I get an audience. I'm not ashamed of anything I'm saying. You know, I'm looking at a woman, and she looks back at me, and I keep looking at her, and she turns away. And then she looks at me again, and I'm staring at her, and she turns away. 10 minutes later, she walks over to me and says, do you know me? I go, I'd like to. I go, I was looking at you and I was admiring how handsome a woman you are. And she looks at me and she starts smiling. She goes and sits down across from me, and she's looking at me, and I'm staring at her. And I'm just thinking about how I'm fucking her. And then she uncrosses her legs just so I could see that she's not wearing any panties. Now, my friend said to me, and that's why I stopped going out with my friends when I went trying to pick up women. My friend says to me, she's just teasing you. And I said, what do I care what you think? I'm going to go after her. And I took her home that night, and I fucked her. But if I would have listened to my friend, I would go, okay, forget it, and turned away, I wouldn't have fucked her. Because he told me to stop wasting my time. And I didn't waste much time. You go after it. It's like I was going into a subway station, and there was this girl in front of me walking in the subway, and I said to my friend, she's really good looking. I said, I got to say hello to her. And my friend says, she's just going to get mad that you're talking to her. And I went over and said hello to her, and she gave me her number, and I went out with her for a year. If you listen to anybody else and worry about what they're thinking about. Most of the guys are just as afraid as you. And they're always thinking of what the woman's going to think about. And I tell you something, I think about at least 50% of the guys are thinking, my dick is too small, she's not going to like me. I mean, you're thinking about things that are important. I tell you, when your dick's in her mouth, don't worry about it anymore, right?
No. Let me give you a story. So back when I was living in Chicago, I went to this bar. Met this. It was the end of the night, so I wasn't really. I was having fun. I was with my boys. Meet this bartender. Gorgeous girl, Midwestern type. You know, Alan knows the type. You know, like blonde, blue eyes. You know, from Wisconsin, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So she's working, and obviously she's getting hit on all over the place. I start talking to her. I give her my number because she's like, I don't give out my number. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll give you my number. Eventually, she texts me back. We go out for a coffee, right? We go out for a coffee. We have a good time. And then the next meetup, she came to my house, and I cooked for her. Okay? So I cooked for her. Things are going well. I got her in my bed, and we don't fuck. She leaves. So she's like, she didn't want to give it up so quick, or something like that. Okay. We make plans for a third date. She's running late. Like she misses the mark or something. And I'm like, oh, I'm at home. So if you wanna hang out, just come over. She comes over, and we end up naked in my bed again, and we don't fuck again.
And whose fault is that?
It's my fault, but I'm.
Well, you know what? If she's teasing you like that, I tell her, get out and don't call me anymore.
Yeah, man. I mean, honestly, and, of course, we all live and learn, so I'm not, trying to admonish you too harshly, but just listening to that story, I was almost semi-cringing because for you to let it get to a third date under those circumstances, that's all on you. Like, it's just like what I was saying earlier. I don't know if you listened to the show, this episode earlier, but I always say this about fool me once, shame on you. I'd even say fool me twice, shame on you. But fool me 3 or more times, then it becomes shame on me. I mean, if a woman acts flaky with you or acts like an attention whore or cock tease with you one time, then that's when you can fairly validly say, okay, you're a bitch. I didn't know that, because you didn't know.
But
if a woman acts like an attention whore or cock teaser 2 or more times, and definitely 3 or more times, then that's when you got to point the finger at yourself. And see, everything you said in describing that story, everything about you said, I'm desperate to fuck you. You didn't exhibit any behavior that showed her that. Just think about it, Alex. Think about it. Let's say over the last 2 to 3 weeks, you fucked 10 women that were Playboy centerfolds. And you knew at least half of those 10 women you could fuck a second time, third time, and fourth time. You knew that for a fact. If you met a woman tomorrow that gave you any remotely of a hard time, would you still talk to her? Or would you have an attitude like, bitch, I'm fucking 10 Playboy centerfolds?
Oh, absolutely not. And that's the issue, is really having the momentum and having confidence in myself that I can get that type of quality.
No, I say no. It's not the issue. The issue is rule number 1. You're thinking what she's thinking about. She's leading you to think you're going to fuck her, and you're still waiting for it. If a woman comes in my bed and gets out of my bed, it doesn't happen a second time. No, you're not going to tease me. Take off. Goodbye. Don't bother me anymore. I'm not. That's playing games. By allowing it to happen once and not stopping it, you can make. Once you set a precedence, she can do it every time, and it's not her fault. It's your fault. you're again thinking. You tell her, like, what's going on? You're not going to fuck me? Suck my dick. Show me you're serious about going out with me.
Oh, Alex, I got to play the David X clip again. I don't know if you heard it at the beginning.
I said, did you ever fuck her in 2 years? He goes, no. I go, well, I'll tell you, there's two things here. One, you're a mental case. Number two, she's a real bitch. Because she didn't think in 2 years, once he wants to fuck me, I don't believe she's that stupid. So she was using you for 2 years. She's not. She's a smart bitch. But she's a bitch.
Yeah, at least I didn't waste 2 years trying to chase her. No, I mean, my issue is really...
You know what?
It's always with the hot ones. It's always with the hot ones.
You know what? No, listen. You say, at least I didn't wait 2 years. To me, him and you is the same. You're the same. It's like, what's the difference? You rob a 7-Eleven with a gun, or you rob a 7-Eleven with a knife. There's a difference? No, there's no difference. You permitted this woman to abuse you. That's abuse. Again, you don't think she knew you wanted to fuck her? And then she came back again to tease you again?
And
Twice
see,
in my blood?
Alex, what I've told you, probably heard me say on this show, and I say this all the time in consultation sessions. See, women, manipulative women in particular, they don't always test you. That's one thing I always remember about women. Women going to test you. One of their tests is they're going to test you to see how badly you want the pussy. And if a woman knows she can exhibit undesirable behavior towards you, or cock-teasing behavior towards you, or disrespectful behavior towards you, and you take it, that's when they know they can play you. That's when they say in their mind, oh, I can play this guy. And this is not just me talking my ass. I mean, I can't tell you how many women have told me that literally to my face a number of times. They say, oh, yeah, I test guys all the time. I can tell when I can play a guy, when a guy's a chump. That's a word that they throw around a lot. They say, I can tell if I can play a guy like a chump by if I can treat him like shit, or if I can say something disrespectful to him and he's still trying to get the pussy. And like David X said, man, you got to be hard line with women, man. You got to be like, the moment a woman even gives you a remote hint that she's trying to give you a hard time, you got to be like, bitch, take off. You're dismissed. Later. Go. I ain't got time for this shit. That lets them know. See, in your mind, and a lot of guys, man, they see, well, isn't that kind of being an asshole? No. The subconscious message you're sending a woman is, I already got so much pussy coming my way that I don't need to take shit from you to get your pussy. And if that's not clear in your words, it has to be clear in your like demeanor and overall behavior. But yeah, you can't let no woman be cock teasing you, man. The woman you described, she was just fucking playing with your head like basically like you were a chump, dude. And so anyway, I got one more call I want to get to before I wrap it up with David. So thank you, Alex, as always. I love it when you call in. Give me a nice Mode 1.
Mode 1.
Alan Roger Curry.
Up front, straightforward.
Alan Roger Curry.
And unless 970 presses 1 or 616 presses number 1, then this is going to be my last call. This is going to be my last call. Area code 702. Area code 702. You're now up front and straightforward with Alan Roger Curry and my special guest for the 7th time, attraction expert, seduction guru, dating coach, David X. What's your question or comment?
Hey, what's up, Alan? It's Alexander, man.
Alex Choi. What's up, Alex Choi, man? How you doing, man?
I'm good. How's it going? Mode 1.
Oh, good. Oh, you said Mode 1. I got to play it one more time.
Alan Roger Curry.
upfront, straightforward.
Alan Roger Curry.
Now, what question do you have for David X, or what comment do you have related to the conversations we've been having?
Actually, I just had two quick comments actually. First of all, Alan, it's good to hear from you again, man. And Mr. David X, it's my first time meeting you. It's an honor to meet you. So, good to talk to you. Actually, the first time I saw you, it was actually on a YouTube video where you and Alan, I think you guys were in London or something.
Yeah.
It's not like a direct dating summit or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I want to make it clear real quick to my listeners. Wait just a second before you go out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to bring up, negative stuff or drama, but I got to let my listeners know, the ones who don't know you already, is that I don't roll with the direct dating summit crew anymore. So don't anticipate me being part of any of the future events. I know Sasha has like an online academy. I'm not a part of that, so I'm not going to say anything critical or disparaging about Sasha. I'm just saying I don't roll with them anymore, so I just want to make that clear as a kind of a FYI. But anyway, go ahead, Alex.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, my question is actually something you mentioned, not in this episode, but I believe it was 2 episodes ago. I was listening to your podcast. You said, and David, Mr. David, you can answer this too. Alan, you mentioned something about like how you don't really try to pursue platonic friendships with women and stuff.
Yep.
Is that just like by personal choice, or is there like you just
of course,
like
yeah, that's personal choice.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think. Here's my simple thing, man. You know my term fun clubbing. I use it a lot. Anytime you're interacting with a woman and you're pretending, keyword is pretending, to be content with a purely platonic friendship, but deep down you have romantic feelings for a woman or casual sex feelings for a woman, and you're not coming out and saying that means you're fun clubbing. And that's the worst thing you can do. Like, I started off talking about alpha males versus beta males. Whenever guys ask me, Alan, what would you say is step number 1 to making the transition from a weak, passive beta male to a more confident, self-assured, take charge type of alpha male? Like, what's the very first step in making that transition? I always say, first thing, start becoming a horrible platonic friend to every woman that you're platonic friends with, that you want to fuck or date. The only women that you should be good platonic friends with is women that's your genuine interest. Like, you 100% want to be just nothing more than platonic friends with a woman. But if you are platonic friends with any woman that you are romantically attracted to, sexually attracted to, then whoever listening to this right now, starting tomorrow, or I can say if you're listening to the archive, I say starting today or tomorrow, become the most horrible friend you possibly can be. And I'm not even saying that jokingly. As a matter of fact, speaking of London, me and David X being in London, I work with a client in London. I'm going to tell this story real quick, now I'll turn it over to David. But I was working with a client in London, and he came to me, he said, hey, Alan, man, I got this one female friend that I'm attracted to, but, I don't know how to let her know. And I said, number 1, what the fuck you doing being friends with somebody you want to date or fuck?
Right.
And he just kind of looked at me like, wow, until you just said that, I don't know if I ever thought about it. I said, you never want to maintain a platonic friendship with a woman you want to date or fuck, ever. I said, what's the nature of your friendship now? He said, well, we usually go out to lunch 2 to 3 times a month, and she usually shares stories with me about all the guys that she thinks are assholes and jerks, and that, I said, wait a minute. You listen to her talk about stories of men she's dated and fucked? And he was like, yeah. I said, what kind of bitch are you? And he looked at me like, wow, Alan, did you just call me? I said, seriously, what kind of bitch are you that you want to listen to a woman talk about her problems, disappointments, and frustrations with a guy whose dick has been in her mouth and been in her pussy, but yours hasn't? And he was just like, wow. I said, next time you hook up with her, you guys go to lunch. Oh, he ended up telling me that he pays for the lunch 90% of the time. So I said, next time y'all guys, if she invites you to lunch, don't pay for shit. Only pay for your own meal. And the next time she starts talking about a guy who she's having problems with that she recently dated or recently fucked, look her dead in her eyes and say, bitch, do I look like I give a fuck about other men's dicks who've been in your mouth and your pussy? And at first she was like, Alan, I'm sorry, you're crossing the line now. I could never, ever say that to my good friend. She's a good friend of mine. I said, she's a good friend of yours, but you want to fuck her. He was like, yeah. I said, what kind of bitch are you? So then finally he says, okay, I'm gonna do what you tell me to do. So anyway, skipping over miscellaneous details, he ends up doing exactly what I told him to do. And he said she got pissed off. And I told him this ahead of time. I said, her first reaction is she's gonna get pissed off. She's gonna give you ultimatums like, you better apologize or I'll never speak to you again, or something of that nature. Sure enough, he said that's what she did. And he admitted he was tempted to break down and apologize at one point, but he heard my voice in his head, and he said, no, I'm not going to apologize. Anyway, final story. Sure enough, a few weeks after I gave him that advice, he ends up, first he made out with her. They didn't have sex, but they, made out for the first time, and then, a week or two later, they ended up fucking. And he was like, Alan, you're a genius. He was like, man, you're a genius. And I appreciated that compliment, genius, but really it wasn't genius. I gave him some advice. And it's a simple advice, and this is me giving you guys free advice again. I was talking about I give you guys free advice. It's really simple advice. Don't ever in life try to maintain a disingenuous platonic friendship with a woman that you want to date or fuck. That is the worst. I don't rank that as one, top 2, 3. Other than just not approaching a woman at all and not talking to a woman at all, I probably rank that as the second worst thing you could ever do as a man, is maintaining platonic friendships with women you want to date or fuck. David, your turn.
Well, I'll tell you, I can't agree with you more. But and every time, and like I said, you should watch some of those lawyer shows on TV, those judge shows. You'll see people like you all the time. The women take them for a ride. They don't. And I remember the guy says, the woman says, yeah, all he wanted to do was sleep with me. And I remember this one judge said, yeah, but you knew he wanted to sleep with you, and you kept taking his money. Yeah, because again, and if she would have said, yeah, I let him get in my bed and we were both naked, but I never let him fuck me, it wouldn't surprise me. She's doing a rip-off job on the guy, and the guy is now feeling he did something wrong on top of everything else. Guys like you think it's your fault. You're not even thinking it's their fault. You're always, what did I do wrong? And then you're getting depressed, and it's a vicious circle. You have to recognize when somebody is not good for you, go. If they don't want what you want, get somebody who does.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so Alex, my recommendation would be, and of course I'm going to tell you, I'm going to warn you ahead of time, all of your female friends, if you were to share the advice I gave you, they're going to say, oh, that Alan guy, he sounds like an asshole. Don't listen to him, Alan. Even if you're a friend, don't listen to him. He sounds like a jerk. He's a shallow, superficial jerk. He's giving you bad advice. That's because they want to use your ass. They want to use you for flattery and an ego boost. They want to use you for entertainment. Like I was listening to another clip. Matter of fact, I played it at the beginning, but David X said something from my first interview with him. And I noticed a lot of guys make this mistake, and this is something I emphasize. Matter of fact, I caused controversy when I said this in London. I said, trying to be known as Mr. Funny Man or trying to be known as a Mr. Entertainer guy is one of the biggest mistakes you can make with women. And like David X has this comment, I don't remember the exact words, but he basically said, you know, if you're a clown, of course you're going to attract women's attention for, you know, X number of minutes or even X number of hours because you're being a clown, you're like a dancing monkey. But I don't mean a woman going to want to date you or give you some pussy. They're just going to look at you as a clown. And that's where I find a lot of guys make mistakes when it comes to platonic friendships. They think because women love being entertained by them that means that woman ultimately is going to want to date them or give them some pussy. And that's simply not true. The main 3 or 4 reasons, well, you got my book, The Possibility of Sex. I spell it all out in that book. The reasons why women want to be platonic friends with guys is if I had to narrow down to 4 things, I would say number 1 is to be flattered and to be given an ego boost. Number 2 is to be entertained socially. Number 3 is for financial and non-financial favors. And number 4 is for you to be an empathetic listening ear and more or less a male girlfriend and listen to all their problems, frustrations, and disappointments with the guys who they actually are dating and fucking. And so, yeah, I tell guys all the time, if you want to have more romantic and sexual success with women, become a horrible friend. You want to actually hear women say, Alex, the last few weeks you just haven't been a good friend to me. You've been ignoring me. You don't respond to my phone calls and my email. You want to hear that shit. See, that's when you're doing well, is when women start complaining about you. You know, I just asked you to hang out, Alex, at the bowling alley. You never agree to do it. You just ignore me. And yeah, no. So anyway. Thank you so much for calling in again, Alex. I appreciate it. And now, since I only got about 5, 6, 7 minutes left, I'm going to just ask David one final question, and then I'm going to let him give his information. So if a client came to you, David, sometime next week and said, David, my problem is, you know, my mother always taught me to be a perfect, well-mannered gentleman with women and kind of spoil them, and it's resulted in a lot of women leading me in relationships instead of me leading them. What would be some quick general advice you would give some potential male clients on how to be a man who leads women as opposed to being a man who's led by women?
I would say change your attitude. That's what you have to change. Take an attitude like mine or Alan's. You have to change your attitude. You can't change your upbringing. It happened. We're not psychiatrists. I'm not going to tell you your parents did anything wrong. No, they brought you up to the best of their ability. But now you have to change your point of view. My point of view is when I look at a woman, I think only about what I'm going to do to and with her. That's what I'm thinking about. And if that woman, when I approach her, isn't responsive, I go to another one. Life's short. I don't want to waste my time. It's simple. You're looking for it to be complicated. It's not. Alan will tell you the same thing. He finds it simple. It's not a hard thing to be able to do. It's not like I'm telling you to try to figure out what she's thinking about. I'm trying to tell you, stop trying to figure out what she's thinking about. Figure out what you're thinking about, you know.
See, that's one of those things. I say this all the time. Like this, matter of fact, a woman said this to me in Chicago. I gave a speaking presentation. And she said something interesting. She said, Alan, your advice is almost simultaneously very, very simplistic, but yet very, very profound. And I said, yeah, I've heard that a couple of times. I said, but give me a little bit more explanation. She said, well, the advice you're giving men is really very simple to understand. You're telling men to be more upfront, specific, and straightforward with their desires, interests, and intentions. She said, there's nothing complicated about that. But she said, but the thing is, where the profound part comes in is when you ask yourself as a man or even a woman observing a man, what has prevented you from being this way from the get-go? And I said, yeah, that's an interesting phrase. And it's true. Like, the way you just said that, what you just said is one of those things I would categorize as, on one end, very, very simple, but for a lot of guys, it's going to be like rocket science. You said, stop trying to think, find out what a woman is thinking, and concentrate on what you're thinking. And you're going to have guys listening to this right now, or when they listen to the archive, they're going to say, some percentage of guys are going to say, I never thought about it that way. Matter of fact, you probably don't remember this comment of yours in London, but I remember this vividly. You said a simple criticism of most of the guys in the audience. And it was so true. You said, because a lot of guys who spoke, they would say that they had a master's degree in this or a PhD. Or, I mean, it was a lot of educated guys in that audience in London. And you said, you know the problem with a lot of you guys? You said, I'm going to compliment you first. A lot of you guys are very, very intelligent. But you said that's your problem. You overthink everything. And I was like, damn, ain't that the truth?
They're afraid that's simple, it doesn't work. You know, there's an old saying, it's called more is less.
Yeah.
Okay, and you don't have
to...
no,
actually you mean less is more.
Less is more, yeah. And you don't have to try to figure out, I guess I'm getting tired tonight, you don't have to figure out what anybody's thinking about. You just have to react. Look at the animal kingdom. Females put up a smell, a scent to attract the males. Women are doing it here too, but you're not letting yourself recognize it because you're so focused on trying to figure out what they're thinking about. You're not going with nature. When women go out to attract men, they're putting out the scent there, and you're not even letting yourself think, maybe, why am I attracted to that woman over there? There's another good-looking one over there, but that one's attracting me. Why? Maybe she's giving out the scent. Maybe she's in heat.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to figure out the hard stuff, try to figure out the easy stuff.
See, that's another statement that's simple but yet profound. Anyway, Dr. Ray going to cut me off in a couple of minutes. So real quick, tell any guy who is interested in pursuing your tutelage, your mentorship, your coaching, how they can find you on the World Wide Web, what's your website, and any events you might have, like a speaking engagement or something you might have coming up.
Well, right now I'm just coaching because I have so many students. I got to graduate a few more, and I've been very busy with that. I call my graduates when they tell me what they want to accomplish by working with me. As soon as they've accomplished it, they're a graduate. So it's simple. And you can always reach me at davidxdating.com. You can go to my dating site, DavidXDating. You can go to davidx.com. You can go to davidxseduction.com. You can go to a lot of sites. I have an 800 number, and usually when I'm working with students, I deal with them on a daily basis. I give out homework, and you come back and give me the results, and we work on that to achieve what we need to achieve to make you successful in what you want to accomplish. And I'm working with a lot of students. I could let you speak to a lot of guys that have been very successful with many different ways. And like I said, I've got an 800 number. It's good. I think today it's good anywhere. And you can always reach me at davidxdating or davidx.com. davidxdating.com or davidx.com.
Well, thank you so much, buddy, for joining me again. And listeners, I would recommend anybody hook up with David X, man. He's, again, like I said, he's with all due respect to some of these other dating coaches I've interviewed on this show and whatever, man, when it comes to specifically the notion of being direct with women, there's nobody I would recommend other than myself than David X. Because me and him, I said out there, me and him get it. We get it. Most of these other guys, they don't get it. We get it. And so, yeah, man, he will not be disappointed working with him. And that's going to do it for our show. I'll be back next week. I think my